What's up, everyone? Lee here, aka the Movie Pope. Now, over the past 4 seasons, we've reviewed a lot of movies and reacted to a bunch of trailers, ranging from serious Oscar contenders to subpar pop culture drivel. Every Friday, we're pumping out these reviews, but we've always gotten a lot of attention when it comes to Marvel movies. We can't help it. They scream for our attention. So, we're compiling all our Marvel movie reviews. This time, we give you Volume 1, which kicks off with our very first review on the podcast, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. A very emotional send-off to both the team and James Gunn as he prepared to take over the DC studios. Next, we explore the series' Secret Invasion, where we see Nick Fury working with Talos to thwart a would-be Skrull takeover of Earth, which, as Luka would put it, a poor adaptation of the source material. And finally, we cap things off with Deadpool and Wolverine, which renews our hopes in Marvel, sort of. It's a nice way to bring levity to a franchise that's been taking itself very seriously. We'll be back for Season 5 in a week or so. In the meantime, if you're really missing us, you can check out past episodes. They've been arranged in playlists based on season and topic. Just want to see the reviews? There's a playlist for that. Just want to see the trailer reactions? Boom, we gotcha! Want to just see superhero film reviews? We're working on that. Anyway, enjoy MCU Essentials Volume 1, and we'll catch up with you soon. This is the Movie Pope, signing out.
Alright, so, welcome to the Movie Pope, a podcast where we discuss all different types of movies and TV shows. And today we are going to discuss Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Now, I should note that we initially did the recording last week, but due to some technical difficulties, the first episode, for whatever reason, the file got corrupted. So we're re-recording it again, and this time everything is working as expected. Lee, I should let you know right off the bat, when I found out that the whole thing had been messed up, I literally had to take my computer apart, replace the hard drive and everything to make sure that everything was functioning. I should have known when my computer was running really, really slow that something was going to be off, so I didn't. I should have been a bit more attentive to that. But yeah, let's.
Hey, no worries. We're gonna crush it a second time, so we can only do better from here. So.
And I think too, for this episode, we kind of know what the main talking points are, so everything should kind of go a bit more smoothly this time around. So, for starters, we saw the movie last month. Was it like the first Saturday? What were your impressions of it overall?
Yeah, so I think as far as the movie goes, I really liked the first one, right? Second one wasn't quite as good. This one I kind of felt was kind of in that I enjoyed it, but I don't feel like it had the same. It didn't hit me the same, or I didn't enjoy it as much as the first one. So I think kind of the big things that I feel like just didn't really work for me too well was, one, the story was a lot more dark than I was expecting.
Yeah.
Which I think if I was just looking at this as a standalone movie, I'd be like, wow, like they really knew how to kind of create this villain with kind of like all this, kind of visual concerning stuff that we see with like animal abuse and everything like that. So like, you really know how to create a villain like that, because it's funny how like we could watch movies nowadays. We can see villains kill hundreds, if not like, with Thanos, he can kill half a population, and we're like, huh, that kind of sucks. But when you watch 4 animals get experimented on, and obviously a lot more other experiments, but we kind of focus on 4, it's funny how much like that impacts people more than everything else that technically happened.
Yeah, Yeah, it is kind of odd because if you think about it, like when I watched the movie, those scenes when they were imprisoned, I felt a lump in my throat,
Oh
um,
yeah,
and I was like, man, this really hits me right here, like the way they're being treated. I mean, and I'll mention this too. When I was in school, I did a double major in film and international studies, and I can't tell you how many films I saw where we were just watching like documentaries on people who survived like all these traumas. I'm just like sitting there rolling my eyes. I'm like, okay, they're laying on pretty thick, but here it's like, oh my god, this is awful.
yeah, I know. It's just it's so interesting how and like it's just interesting how that's the reaction I think a lot of people get. I mean, we went with two other people, and one of them she cried during a lot of those scenes, which
See, I
like I
didn't know
said, it
that.
just goes to show you that. And like this is something that I mean you probably have like a younger audience for. So I can imagine that I think kids walking into this might not really expect, or I guess parents they're bringing the kids to this probably don't expect to see something like that being depicted, and that might kind of ruffle some people is how that's all going. So
Yeah.
um but I think that I think as far as like a movie goes, I thought it was stronger than the other entries just because I enjoyed like having the villain involved. They had like something very cohesive happening with it. It felt a lot more like they really wanted to have a strong movie. But I think when I go to see Guardians, and I think when a lot of fans go to go see Guardians, we kind of enjoy more of the humor, kind of the comedy that's involved with it, and this one just didn't feel like it hit those notes as well as certainly the first one, or even the second one. It just I think the story just kind of, while was I think a good aspect of it, I just think that the overall tone of it didn't really match up what we've seen in other Guardians movies. So
But to be
that's just where I was with that. How about, what did you think about it?
I mean, to your point, but to be fair, I mean, with with the projects that we've seen in the other phases of Marvel so far, they've gotten a bit more darker. So I mean, like we can look at something like WandaVision, Loki, even Spider-Man: No Way Home. I mean, there's bit of a much more darker tone. So if you think about it, yes, Volume 3 is a bit of an anomaly in the overall Guardians franchise, but in terms of the way that Marvel's been going over these past few years, it's kind of on par for the course. Um, really. Um, I mean, I will say this. I mean, it was an emotional ending to the trilogy. I felt it was very fitting. But at the same time, I felt like there was a lot a lot more that they could have done with that. A lot more elements that maybe they could have toned down on. Maybe a few storylines that they really kept laying it on over and over again. Like for instance, Quill kept saying, come on, Gamora, you have to remember who I am. Even though it was established, she has no idea of who he is, and the fact that he keeps egging her on and egging her on, I remember sitting there just thinking, dude, let it go. She doesn't know who you are. This is a completely different person. And it's not like this Gamora resurrected from the dead, and all of a sudden she's like, "Oh, Peter, oh, I'm starting to remember things about you. I remember that you and I had a thing." I mean, the biggest payoff I enjoyed really was the fact that Nebula we finally got to see a different side of Nebula, because it was
Yes.
a story arc that began with the first Guardians movie. It it it, it, it developed even more in Volume 2, and then you saw her come into her own in the two Avengers movies. And finally, you see her get the closure that she's finally wanted, and Drax also. Drax finally gets the closure that he's been longing for, also, because you remember in the first movie, his whole motivation for for being in the Guardians, well, initially was to get revenge against Ronan, and Thanos for killing his family. And at the end, he finally gets the family that he's been looking for, because we've always known that the Guardians was always going to be a temporary thing. It's like with the Avengers. The Avengers they weren't going to be this continual thing, this continual entity that would go out and meet these threats. They came together, they did their thing, and they went their separate ways. And I feel like with Nebula and Drax, I feel like those are the two who got the biggest payoff. Quill, I feel like it's kind of up in the air. I feel like there are some things that should have been resolved, but they're leaving that door open, which I can sort of understand from a business standpoint. But
Yes.
I feel like with Quill, there's only so much you can do with the character. And for me, I feel like he was the one character who kind of felt the least developed in that movie, to be honest with you.
Oh,
because
I agree with that.
Because because think about it, what was he doing at the beginning of the movie? I mean, he was getting hammered the entire time, and he sort of like steps into the role of leading the Guardians, but it kind of felt like he felt very one dimensional. What did you think about Quill in this one?
Gosh, that's I think you bring up a great point there. I think we've kind of it's complicated, right? Because I think from a movie going standpoint, right? Like if you're somebody that really likes the Guardians, right? You've seen one where you bring this kind of band together, like he obviously has a thing for Gamora. You see that start to really get developed in the second one, and it feels very awkward when you get to the third one, where it's kind of like they want to hit the reset button. And obviously, I understand storytelling wise that makes sense because we know what happens to Gamora during the Avengers movies.
Yeah.
So we understand from an audience how that's working. I just think from like a storytelling standpoint, it does put all the characters kind of in an awkward place, because I think for a lot of people, or let me not speak for everyone, right? I know for myself, I was kind of hoping to see a little bit more of their bond being rekindled, and they just kind of leave it open to interpretation, or kind of leave it open to them trying to like maybe form a bond again. But as you go through the movie, like obviously Gamora is a very, it's a different person. It's not the Gamora that we know. But as an audience member, right, like I've seen Gamora, I've seen what she's about, and I've seen who she is, and it just feels like we're seeing somebody totally different, which, like I said, movie telling wise, that's exactly what's happening. But as someone that's viewing this, I just don't really know how to feel about that. And it just felt kind of odd that, like you pointed out, like there was a very, very, very long, like everything was just, Peter Quill kind of just sitting there kind of dumping out his emotions, which, I would understand, right? Like, I mean, this is someone that he had a very strong connection with. And while, rationally speaking, we know that, this is not the Gamora that, he fell in love with, it still just feels very awkward when we see it kind of depicted like this, where they pretty much just kind of like clash the whole time. And the whole time I'm thinking, like, eventually, like, she's going to warm up a little bit. And I think there is a little bit of that happens towards the end. But it just felt like it kind of ended with, like, hey, we're just going to go our separate ways. So it kind of made all the story beats that happened with him feel like it was as important, or you don't see that growth like we see from someone like a Nebula or someone like a Drax, who definitely went through more and had to overcome that.
It kind of felt like a bait and switch if you think about it, because this entire time you're just thinking, oh man, they're gonna get together. Gamora's finally gonna come and see it, and then no, she goes back to the Ravagers, and you're like, what the hell, dude? Like, you strung us along, and this is what we get. Like, come on, like, give us something.
Yeah, exactly. I think that was kind of the frustrating part for me. And like I said, like, I'm not expecting them just to like rekindle or have everything come together at the end. And I wasn't expecting that. I didn't really think that was needed. But it would have been fun if at the end, instead of her going with the Ravagers, she would have been like, you know what? Hey, maybe I'll give this Guardians thing a try, or maybe I'll see what you guys are about. Like, that was kind of the ending I was hoping to see. And like I said, I think that's more for myself, wanting maybe the happier ending than maybe the more realistic one. But really, that's what I was hoping, because at least then I can understand, like, hey, Peter Quill, he went through all this, he went through this struggle, he really put it out there. And at least at the end, he kind of had this moment where you could kind of see just the slightest hint of hope, but it feels like that was all kind of sucked out. And I think that was the part that really kind of stuck out to me, because at the end, like, he goes back to Earth, and like the whole time I'm thinking, like, does he really care that much about his grandfather? Like, I didn't really believe that. It just felt like it was like a story beat that was put in this story. Like, obviously we know he has a very strong connection with his mom. So like, I, totally understand that, but like, it just didn't feel like that was I would say, a worthy kind of satisfaction for the character. It was like,
it kind of got shoehorned in there. It's like, what else can we add in there?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
So let me ask you this, because I was thinking about the all of this week. Do you think the story would have been okay without Gamora being involved at all? Because I felt like you could have had you still could have had a great Guardians movie without Gamora in there, because the way I see it, she really didn't add much to it, apart from being just this canvas where Quill could just spill his emotions out and make a fool out of himself.
Oh, that's a great one. You know what? Honestly, deep down, I would say yes, but I feel like, as if you're a fan of the Guardians, she's back, and it would just be awkward if she wasn't involved. Like, it just feels like it'd be like, hey, like, we see at the end of Endgame, we see her, back in the picture and everything. It just feels like that would have been more. I don't think it would have gelled well, knowing that she exists, but we don't see her in the Guardians. I get where you're coming from, and I do think that there's a part of me that says, like, at the end of the day, I don't know if her being a part of the story really enhanced a whole lot of it.
Yeah.
But in that same token, I feel like the movie, it almost like you had to have her in there, because it would just be too awkward if she wasn't. Because I think every fan would just be like, well, where's Gamora? Like, we're all wanting to see what happens at the next stage of this relationship, or whatever you want to call it. And I just feel like it would have been too hard to not include her. And it just felt like it wouldn't feel like the Guardians again. At least that's how I look at it.
Right. So yeah, because in my mind, I was thinking, I mean, it made sense that for Gamora to go off and do her own thing, joining the Ravagers, and becoming a head honcho over there and helping them out. I felt, but I did feel like there were some scenes where maybe she wasn't really that needed as a player. I would probably say towards the end of the movie, honestly, because I felt like I felt like she fit well at the very beginning of the movie, where she helped them get into that that corporation building, and I felt like at that point she could have just bowed out, and she would have been like, "Hey, great knowing you guys, we're working with you, peace out." I felt like I felt like she kind of overstayed her welcome at that point. You know what I mean? But that's, I don't know, that was just running through my head as I was thinking about that. So I want to shift towards the villain. Now, I remember after the movie, I remember saying that the High Evolutionary was like a different version of Thanos, just because he was single-minded. He had this he had this drive, this motivation to want to create perfection. But the way he did it was very much different from the way that that Thanos was doing it. Although in both instances they ended with genocide. Not to mention the fact that he wore purple. What was your impression of the High Evolutionary?
I I would say he definitely. I mean, when he was when he was in a scene, he ate that scene up.
Oh yeah,
Like every time he was on there, like, I was just like, oh damn, I can't wait to see how absolutely batshit crazy this guy is gonna be and what he's gonna do. So I did find him very entertaining to watch, and I think, to kind of like what we talked about earlier, like, we kind of see him going about, you know, like kind of the animal abuse and like what he did in order to try to create this perfect idea. Like obviously this character has a strong god complex.
Hmm.
Where and I mean we see it later on too when he literally blows up the planet because he's unhappy with it. So he's someone that can create all this, go through all this effort to you know, kind of create this world and everything and inhabit it. And then he's just as easily just like, he could throw it all away and start again. So like he's a character that clearly has a very, very different understanding of what he's wanting to get out of the world. And like obviously he doesn't care what he has to do or who he has to harm in order to get through that. So I think you know, it does make him as a villain, it makes him very despicable, which I think a lot of people are going to gravitate towards because it's like, oh man, like this guy's a real, you know, asshole. Like, you know, we want it. Like, I think it gives people that more of an edge as you get towards the end. Like, you're just like, man, I just really want to see them kick this guy's ass. Like, we really want to see this guy get taken out here. So I think that definitely plays a part in it. So I'll give them some props. Like, it wasn't, like I said, it had its flaws as far as the movie goes. And you know, I think the villain, I would have liked to seen maybe a little bit more understanding of like maybe not necessarily like a true origin story, but I think it would have been nice to see a little bit more development as far as like his ideologies and everything like that.
Yeah, he was
But
very one-dimensional. So
yes, no, I agree, and sometimes that's not an issue. I think a lot, you know, I do generally enjoy like those villains where there's more to the character. It's not black and white.
yeah,
So sometimes it's good. I think in this one, like they really went out to create this character that everyone was going to despise, and I think they did that and then some. Because I
I
don't
mean,
think there's anyone that was like, "Hey, yeah, this high evolutionary, yeah, you know what? Maybe I could understand his reasoning or I could understand his logic." It's like, no, this guy's just kind of a terrible person, and I think it just kind of helps out that as you're drawing up the conclusion, especially with Rocket, them having that kind of final altercation is just like, you know, we're just ready to see him, you know, kind of get his comeuppance, so to speak.
I mean, I mean, I'm with you because at least with Thanos, I mean, however warped his, you know, his worldview is, you can sort of understand where he's coming from. The same with Killmonger in the Black Panther films. Even Obadiah Stane in the first Iron Man movie, you can sort of understand where he's coming from, which motivates what he's doing, you know. And yes, I am taking that position, but I mean, well, like, but I mean, like with the high evolutionary, it's like, yeah, yeah, we get it. You're deranged. You want to create a perfect society. You want to be this total badass. You're essentially God. But why are you doing all of this to begin with? Because because remember later on in the movie, like when he finds out that his quote unquote perfect society isn't as perfect as Quill points out, he's like, "No, yeah, that's true. I'll just create a new one," and he blows it up.
Yeah.
Uh, but uh, but yeah, to your point, I mean, like if we at least if he at least like give us like a hint or an idea as to why he was doing this in the first place, because we know why because we know why he created Counter Earth. It's because he wanted it populated with highly evolved animals, and this was due to the experiments he was doing on Rocket and the others before realizing, oh, there's a better way to perfect the process. But I would have loved to have seen what kind of motivated him to start experimenting on animals in the first place. Did he try to do something with humanoid creatures first of all? He didn't find that satisfactory, and then that kind of made him decide, maybe I should start with animals, create a much better template from them, and kind of go from there. But we never get that, and I think that's the problem with, and I think with Marvel overall, yes, I mean, they do give us some villains, but they don't really give us any compelling villains that we can that have any impression on us. I mean, you remember the Dark Knight movies that Christopher Nolan did? I mean, my God, like the movie was made in what, 07 or something, 07 or 08. He still has staying power to this day. I mean, how many memes do you see of people just just taking public figures and jokerizing them? You really don't see that with any of the Marvel villains. And I think the sad thing is that with with the High Evolutionary, he becomes the latest villain that just gets used and then tossed aside into the you know into the dustbin of characters that we've used and we can forget about. You know.
Sure. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think, I kind of look at, just him and the overarching kind of like Marvel villains, and I do agree. Like, he's someone where obviously stuck out really strong in that movie, but I don't, like I said, he kind of will go out of my brain and move on in the world. And I probably won't think about him as far as being a villain in the future because he didn't really have that sustaining power. I think in the movie, he's kind of a great ploy to help build all this character around Rocket, who, we know has this troubled background. As far as his origin story goes, we just never seen it depicted before. So I think he does a great job of, making us really root for Rocket. But as far as him as a villain, he's going to kind of fall to the wayside. I think as we move forward with a lot of the other Marvel villains.
So what did you think about Rocket's role in the movie? Because honestly, apart from the flashbacks, he really doesn't play that big of a role. He's just out
That's
the
true.
entire time.
He is unconscious a lot of it, absolutely. So I mean, I think I really kind of enjoyed his story. I think it kind of helps us understand more about his character and kind of the way he acts. And I think, we kind of see how much family really means for all these characters, right? Like you brought up, like, you think about to when we discussed Nebula, right? Someone that was, her father tortured her for long periods of time. She's looking for a family. We mentioned Drax and how, he fought Ronan at the beginning because Ronan killed his family, and how he kind of has that moment at the end. So I think like we see this really strong thing with Rocket as well, that we see his tortured past, the fact that he was, experimented on, he had kind of this, I don't want to say father figure with the High Evolutionary, but like he kind of, had this, kind of understanding or this belief in what the High Evolutionary was trying to do, because the High Evolutionary is promising like, oh yeah, we'll create this nice, utopia of a world for all of you guys that you'll be able to go to. So he really believes in that, when we know the High Evolutionary is just saying that for the sake of it. So we see kind of Rocket as he builds this close bond with this people who I would consider his family, right? I would consider those like 3 other animals a part of his family.
Yeah.
And they get killed, right? And I think that's like something where Rocket understands now like what loss is, because he watched his family die right in front of him. And I think that kind of builds up in this movie where it's like, hey, Rocket's been always looking for that family as well. And he finally gets that. And we can kind of see at the end where he becomes kind of the new head of the Guardians, so to speak, at the end of it. And I think that just kind of goes better with that motif that we see why he is the way he is. We see that he ultimately, too, had a family taken away by him from somebody. And now he has this opportunity to kind of start over and almost kind of like have that trust again. Because I think, when he has everything go on, he doesn't want to have people brought into his life because he doesn't want to lose them.
It's very much like well, I was gonna say
Yeah.
it's very much like Good Will Hunting. When Will, when Will explains to
Yes.
the doctor about what happened. I mean, because really, like in the other Guardians movies, he's built up this barrier between him and everybody, so he doesn't have to go through that again. And it's very much the same as what you see in Good Will Hunting, where where we find out that he was horribly abused as a child, and so and so he kind of has this shell that he's in, and he potentially causes all these problems because he would rather be the one inflicting the hurt rather than the one being hurt himself. So there's a lot of parallels you can go between him and that character. That's what struck me with that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that there is a lot of that. Like, he's someone that's with Rocket, he's really suffered a lot of loss, and I think that there's obviously a lack of trust, right? Like, he was really relying on, him being able to do this and kind of create this utopia that they would be able to coexist in, and pretty much all that got shattered in, a very short time frame. So, I had imagined, like, that's kind of in the back of his mind, the whole time. It's just like, oh, these Guardians, are they going to really be around, or am I going to have to see them go goodbye? So I think, like, he keeps everyone a little bit at arm length from time to time, and I think that as he kind of goes through this, I think this is him being able to kind of escape that past and feel more comfortable and confident with being able to have a future where he can just trust people, and not always have in the back of the head that anything that he loves is going to die. So I think that does play very well in this movie, and I think that was the biggest highlight for me, was just be able to see him overcome that, because yes, for all intents and purposes, he is pretty much a cop.
You there? You faded out.
I'm sorry, what was that, Luka?
No, I was saying you just faded out. What was that you were saying? You said he was a con.
No, I was just saying that it just felt like, as he kind of went through this struggle, and the fact that we got to see him at the very end kind of be able to kind of overcome that, and I think just be okay with him be able to work with all these people again, and have kind of that he doesn't have to fear losing them, or at least he's not as worried about that. It allows him to be, a stronger character, which I think that does bode very well. Kind of the mantle being passed from him becoming the new kind of leader of the Guardians, I think kind of shows that growth and that development.
Yeah. Now, speaking of Utopia, I do want to segue into the Sovereign. We saw them at the beginning of Volume 2 with Aisha, and at the end of the movie where they look at the cocoon with Adam Warlock, and then obviously we get the introduction to Adam in that's on Aisha and Adam Warlock.
Yeah, I think for Adam Warlock kind of was odd to me in this movie. I know why they wanted to bring him in. They kind of hinted at it at the end of, the second one. So we all kind of knew he was.
Were you there? Well, I was gonna say this. I felt like with Adam, the actor who portrayed him, Will Poulter, I thought he did a phenomenal job, given what he had to work with. I will say that that childlike demeanor that he had, I thought, yeah, all right, that's sort of some of the humorous element that they introduced in there. But I felt like for the most part there were some elements of Adam that I felt like that they could have kind of toned down on. The big one for me was the fact that when he goes and attacks the Guardians at the beginning of the movie, you initially think, oh, he's this fully developed, powerful being who was created by the Sovereign to fight the Guardians, and as a result, when you see him in the movie, he is, he's you come to find out, oh, well, he's actually this childish character, and in the process, you come to find out, oh, well, he wasn't actually fully developed. He was kind of taken out of, I guess, quote unquote, the womb too soon, which would sort of explain his demeanor. But the thing about Adam Warlock for me, I'll say this: what I really liked about him was the fact that for the limited amount of time and role that he had in the movie, he did a pretty good job in playing up some of the humor. But I felt the humor was kind of forced, in some places. I felt like it's kind of like that person who has awkward comic timing. Uh, that's what I think of Adam right there. I kind of feel like when there are moments where he's being funny, it's like, really, this is the time you choose to be funny. Like, all right, you're young, you're still developing. I'll give you that. Um, and given the length of the movie too, I honestly wouldn't expect much in terms of development, because if they do another Guardians movie, and I strongly believe that they might do it just because it's one of the highest grossing franchises in Marvel. There'll be a chance for us to see Adam kind of develop into a much bigger role, and maybe develop his character from being just this overpowered creature to someone who's trying to figure out who he is and what he does. Because because in continuing with the theme of loss and family, Adam did lose his mother. He did lose Aisha
Yes.
in that explosion on Counter
Mhm.
Earth. So 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 for me, if they do another movie, or if they do like a spin-off series, or even a one-off special on Disney, that would be interesting to see how Adam processes grief. Because in all three Guardians movies, we've seen how each of these characters, well, how each of the Guardians have dealt with grief on their end. So with Adam in particular, I would be interested to see how he would develop, as a person, how he processes, the loss of his mother. Not necessarily his people, because I'm assuming he hasn't really had a chance to know the rest of the Sovereign, but we know he has a very close relationship with Aisha. So to lose her in the way that he did, that has to make you think. I mean, is this going to make him a more aggressive creature? Is Rocket going to take on a more of a fatherly role? Because if you think about it, Rocket actually did a pretty good job in helping Thor get through his grief in Infinity War. So that would be a very interesting dynamic to see how Rocket, who has finally come to terms with the loss, in his past, help Adam, come to terms with dealing with the loss of his family, so to speak.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think Adam Warlock, the way he was kind of injected in the movie, I felt was very awkward. Um, he had obviously a very strong entrance into it, but the whole time, he felt like a third wheel in the story, and I think that the story kind of felt kind of bloated as is. Like you're trying to take on too much, and it just kind of fell to the wayside for me. We have a lot going on. We have the Guardians. We have all of Rocket's backstory. We have Peter Quill and Gamora trying to get back together. So you have all these types of story beats that you're trying to come up with this conclusion in this third and final movie. And then you added Adam Warlock, which I totally get. Like, he kind of has to be brought into it after you kind of hinted at in the second one. So you do have to bring Adam Warlock into this world. But the way he's kind of does it, it felt awkward. Like, I think Will Poulter, did a great job of portraying him. Like, I think like what he was given, he did a great job with it. I just don't know, in the grand scheme of things, what they really wanted to do with that character. So it's kind of like, I guess for me, it's like almost like his story. If they do tell things in the future, it'll be more interesting to see how they handle his story, because I think like his kind of being brought into the Guardians movies just kind of felt like almost like something they had to do for the sake of doing it. But they didn't really know what to do or how to implement it in the story. There was just, I think, too much going on. There was too much you're trying to deal with. And I think that was like one of the weaker elements of it, is them trying to bring him along and trying to do something with his character.
Yeah.
It felt like he was there, and then obviously, there was like a large segment of it where it's just like I don't even remember what happened with them. I think like I just know he shows up at the end to save Peter, and it felt like, oh yeah, well let's just have let's go have Adam Warlock go save him or something because he hasn't been in the movie for 45 minutes now. So
Yeah.
they kind of threw him in there because they didn't know what else to do with him. And I will admit, like I did like kind of what they do, the group hug, and Adam Warlock's just like standing in the background, and he kind of comes in, and I was like, you know what, that's a cute moment. I like that. That was fun to see him do that as the character goes, which is like, oh yeah, like you brought him in, and I think they purposely kind of made him not like he is in the comics, but I think in the comics he's depicted as like much stronger, has a lot more going for them. I think they purposely wanted to have kind of a lesser version of Adam Warlock to keep him kind of more grounded in the story. So
Yeah.
they kind of completed that. It just was not the high point of the story.
I mean, and I don't know what you think about this, but I think, but I think with where they're going with Adam Warlock, I mean the reason why they why they made him the way he is because, and I mentioned it already, is I have a strong feeling that they're going to do more with the Guardians universe, sans James Gunn, and they want to have like a general framework of who Adam is, so whoever steps in can sort of put their own twist on the character.
Yep. Totally agree with you on that.
So another thing, I definitely want to move on to a scene that we think might have been too much for the movie. I guess we could call it a WTF moment. For me, it was when Nowhere got piloted through that wormhole and came to the rescue of the Guardians on the ship. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, they could actually fly this thing the entire time. They couldn't, so they didn't fly it when they had to deal with Ego. They flew it when they had to rescue everybody from the ship. Because in my mind, I was thinking, there could have been a lot of instances where Nowhere could have, come into play and been a huge help to everybody. But all right, now we know that Nowhere could be flown. Was there a WTF moment in the movie for you?
I mean, that definitely was one. I will admit that was a big surprise. I mean, I guess like in a story wise, like they have this very, gotta save everything. They save the people, they save the kids, and then they save the animals. So there's kind of all that stuff going on. So I think that is a kind of a very good example of a moment I really wasn't expecting to see.
Yeah.
I think kind of the whole thing. What was the name? Like the literally fleshy space station, right? Do you remember? Did they have a name for it? I forget.
It was, yeah, I think it was called Org Core.
Okay, yeah. So that whole kind of like side mission, like I know it was kind of like to help reintroduce Gamora and everything. It definitely just kind of felt odd how it all kind of worked out, because ultimately they go there to try to find something. They find it just to find out that, oh, we need to do something else. So it kind of felt like, I don't want to say filler, but it just didn't really, I think, jive very well with how the story kind of happened. So it was just kind of a weird thing to introduce that I don't think really had the kind of the punch to the story I was expecting to see.
Well, not to mention too, because the guy who had the information wasn't even on the ship, right?
Yes.
So it was like,
well, we saw briefly, right? He bumped into him.
Oh yeah, that's right.
On the
that's
ship.
Right.
Yeah, he bumped into them. But yes, like for all intents and purposes, it didn't work out that well. Obviously, you had some of those comedic beats, like Nathan Fillion, I think, had kind of a fun role there, and we saw some other characters have kind of some of those roles. It just overall kind of felt like kind of an odd thing. Like, why create this like weird, like super organic station to have people come in? Like, it just kind of felt very odd. So, I mean, I guess that's kind of on par for Guardians. They are kind of known for that. I just think that it just felt kind of weird with everything going on, and you have kind of this weird organic space station that they're trying to steal something from. And in the backdrop, like the majority of the time, it's just, Peter Quill and Gamora having kind of this argument the whole way. And it just kind of, as that kind of felt odd. So that was kind of my kind of not necessarily a terrible moment. It was just, I think, kind of odd looking back on it.
It was a bit of a head scratcher.
Digest the movie.
Yeah. I mean, I will say this. I mean, the fact that they could grow a spaceship out of I wouldn't even say human flesh, but organic flesh. It was a bit too much for me because at that point I was like, all right, they've really gone into uncharted territory here, and frankly I don't like it. It kind of reminds me of Dead Space almost. The entire ship just like composed of flesh, and you're cutting into it, and well, remember that one scene where they blow the lock, and I don't know what it was. It looked like pus just like coming out, and I'm like, and I'm sitting there. I'm like, thank God I am not eating anything right now because I would be blowing chunks all over the floor. But to wrap up on this review, what's your overall score for the movie? If you had to give it, out of 5, what would yours be?
I would give it. I'm gonna say 3 point. I'm gonna give it 3.4 out of 5. I think it had its moments. I think I still enjoyed seeing the side characters. Like I felt like they got a good opportunity there to really flesh things out. I just wish that I would have liked to see a little bit more out of Peter Quill and Gamora's story. It just kind of felt like they brought it in just to kind of at the end. It was just like, shit happens. This is going to be the way it's going to be. So I felt like there just was opportunity there. So yeah, I give it 3/4 of a Star-Lord. I mean, 3.4 Star-Lords out of 5.
Well, I'm going to see your 3.4 Star-Lords, and I'm going to go 3.2. And the reason why is because yes, it was a great movie overall. Yes, it hit all the emotional buttons, but I felt there were some scenes and situations that kind of overstayed their welcome.
Yes.
For instance, and I mentioned this earlier. Quill kept hammering Gamora about their relationship. My God, how many times do we have to keep hearing that? I mean, and not to mention the other running gags like Cosmo kept nagging on Kraglin saying, well, you need to call me a good dog. You need to call me a good dog. He didn't call me a good dog. And I'm like, okay, I can see how hurtful that is, but do you have to keep mentioning that over and over again? I
forgot about Kraglin. I totally forgot about Kraglin because it was bloated, right? So I totally forgot about Kraglin because like he has this whole story beat of him using like the little weapon. But I totally forgot about that because it was just like another thing trying to shove into this movie. So thanks for mentioning Kraglin. I totally forgot about him. And the movie did. So
yeah, and you know what this reminded me of? It reminded me of Game of Thrones season 8, because how many years did they have to plan that out? What, 2 years before we got season 8? And James Gunn got fired. What was it, 2019 or 2020 by Disney, and he got reinstated. But by that point, he was already working for DC on the Suicide Squad. So I felt like in those intervening years, they could have, he could have sat down, and carefully plotted everything. It felt, to your point, it felt like everything kind of got dumped in there. But at the same time,
it could have been a two-parter. I'm just gonna say that
exactly. And what I also want to add too is that, is that I don't feel all of those additions were necessarily James Gunn's fault. I felt like Marvel probably would have been looking over his shoulder, would have been like, maybe you should add this, maybe you should, omit this, maybe we should develop, do more with this character because because it'll get people, talking about it, which is what we're doing right now. But but I felt overall there were just it was an emotional roller coaster, and frankly, it didn't need to be, because when we've watched the last two Guardians movies, we've walked away feeling pretty good overall. We walked away feeling good and said, saying, I enjoyed it. I really liked, an hour and 30 minutes of entertainment. Here, here you kind of have mixed feelings, because you really don't know, what to take from it, because yes, some characters get closure, others don't, and for me, I kind of feel like if everybody's going to get, if some people are going to get closure, it would make sense that everybody gets some form of closure. I mean, I guess you can say Quill does get his by meeting his grandfather, but that still leaves the whole Gamora and Quill thing up in the air.
Yes.
So, all right. Well, that's our review of Guardians of the Galaxy. Lee, did you have anything else you want to add to that?
No, I think we talked about everything I could think of, and yeah, hopefully, I guess we'll see what happens in the future. I personally, I don't want to see them continue to, I guess, rehash the Guardians. I hope if they do anything with them, it's more in a minor capacity, or just kind of like a touch base cameo. I don't want to see another trilogy, or even another kind of series with these characters. I feel like you're just milking it after a while. So
Lee,
I hope it doesn't go down that path. So I guess
Lee,
we'll see
remember what they did with Star Wars. Okay, we all thought the original trilogy was done, and then they made two more. So
trust me, I totally understand, and I'm not. I certainly do agree that they're probably not done with it yet. I mean, even the ending said "Hey, Star-Lord's going to return." So they were pretty straightforward with what that is. Like I said, I just hope that it's not something where we're kind of restarting, because I think that's kind of an issue with even Marvel as a whole, right? I think we all enjoy the Avengers, and now it feels like we're trying to recast and bring people in and kind of push people into different roles. And I don't know about you, but I just not really a huge fan of it. So I'm hoping that, as I said, if we do see any more of the Guardians, I hope it's more of a minor or a side role. I just don't want to see kind of a continuation or seeing more and more, unless there's something where they feel like they could tell a good story, bringing all the characters back together. If you find a reason to be hey, the new Guardians get captured, and they have to kind of bring everyone back together, and maybe Star-Lord's out of shape because he hasn't been doing anything, and maybe Gamora is a little bit more ruthless. So I think that there's kind of some fun things you could do with that if you're to bring the characters back, but I would like to see the original ones come back. I don't want to see kind of just the new ones all come together, just to kind of create a new trilogy with the 2.0 version of the Guardians. So, but I guess we'll see what happens. Only time will tell. Time and money. So we'll have to see how that all turns out.
All right. Well, next week we are going to be reviewing the Super Mario Brothers movies. So remember to like, comment, subscribe, and thank you so much for watching. And take it easy. All right, and welcome back to the Movie Pope podcast. And today, his moviness and I are going to take a look at the Marvel miniseries Secret Invasion. Was it, was it the spy thriller that the MCU promised, or was it another dog's egg? But before we dive into it, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. And we are trying to shoot for, well, keep saying 50, but any number of subscribers will do just to help the channel grow. And please let us know in the comments below what you think. Do you agree with us, or do you think we're just talking BS? The more comments we get, it shows that you're engaging with us. And yes, we do check the comments section Well, I check it regularly. His moviness is busy managing other people.
I'm too I'm too pompous to have to do all that bullshit. So
that's why that's why he has me do all of that.
Yep.
Speaking of which, I found the perfect Bible for you. It's the New York Times 1000 movies you must see. It's 1,300 pages. I'm going to get that. I'm going to get that book for you because that is the proper size for a Bible, and I can see you just like opening it and be like, well, according to the movie Bible here, So let's dive into Secret Invasion. I do want to say I only saw the first episode when it came out. That was back in June, and I was just so disenchanted by it. I stopped watching it. But then when we decided that this was going to be the next thing we were going to review, I sat down on a Tuesday afternoon at 5 o'clock and I watched the remaining 5 episodes.
I'm sorry. And
can I just say, if you were to look up sadomasochism in the dictionary, that would be used as an example. Watching all 5 or 6 episodes of a Marvel miniseries, back to back without a break. I mean, yeah, I really regret doing that. I should have just stuck with my original plan and just watched 2 episodes per day. But you live and learn. So just to start off, this is the latest venture in what is it? Phase 4? I'm losing track now. Phase 4 or 5 of the whole MCU.
Yeah, I think it's still phase 4, right? Because doesn't I think Aquaman 2 ends phase 4, I think.
That's the wrong franchise.
Okay, I did what where are we now? I don't know.
Secret Invasion, MCU.
Oh yeah, Secret Invasion, yep.
We're so superhero fatigued. We're starting to mix our heroes. we just don't give a shit anymore. So what's different about Secret Invasion is the fact that, unlike the previous Marvel shows, there aren't any superheroes in it. It's just Nick Fury, Maria Hill, and a few other people just running around, just trying to locate and stop the Skrulls. What did you? Before we go any further into details, your moviness, what was your initial impression when you first heard about Secret Invasion when it came out?
I'm not gonna lie, I had some hope. I thought that the idea was interesting. I thought it could be a really fun kind of spy thriller because you have the Skrulls that can literally turn into anybody, right? Literally anybody. They can literally turn into anybody. So like, oh, that's a cool premise. I really liked the Captain America one that was really based upon kind of like them. It was a lot more down to earth, which is what I enjoyed. So
wait, so are you talking about Falcon and the Winter Soldier or Captain America and the Winter Soldier?
I'm sorry. What was the second Captain America? I'm drawing a blank.
The Winter Soldier.
Winter Soldier, thank you. Yes. So
okay.
Like I enjoyed that one because it felt a lot more down to earth. I like how there's kind of that whole mystery around it of, we got Hydra in there and, who's working, who can you trust? And I thought that one was really well done. I really like that. And then this came out and then I totally was not into it at all. So I had high hopes going into it. And, after the first episode, I was not quite like, I wasn't like, this is like the worst thing I ever saw. There's a little bit of intrigue there, but as it progressed, it got worse and worse. And then to me, it just totally flounder throughout the whole series, and I thought the ending was absolute garbage.
Right. So
So I guess we'll get into that, but I had high hopes, and they were very quickly dashed.
so I so so I sort of agree with you on that point because because what they did in Captain America and the Winter Soldier kind of set the tone that Marvel could do a proper spy thriller. So so when you see the trailer and you read about the premise, you think, oh, okay, so basically they're taking the level of thriller intrigue that you got in the Winter Soldier and applying it to Secret Invasion, which is based on a Marvel Comics storyline from I think from
Yes.
either the late '90s or early 2000s, and it had a lot of promise too because because whereas with Winter Soldier, you were dealing with a human adversary who could hide in plain sight. The Skrulls were different because they could hide in plain sight, but there was more to them. They had a more sinister agenda. What did you so what did you think about the whole premise for what the I guess rogue Skrulls were doing?
I mean, it was just it was dumb. The whole thing, like from top to bottom, their whole purpose, the whole premise, it was just all just so stupid. Like really, what it came down to, it felt like Gravik, right, who's the rogue Skrull leader, right?
Yeah.
It just felt like he was bitter about what Nick Fury did, and I could understand that to a certain perspective, right? I get that, Fury made commitments for them to find a new world, right? And he, kind of made an effort, but then it just kind of didn't happen. And I can understand a little bit of where Gravik's hatred would come from. Now, do I feel like that's going to justify, like, oh yeah, we want to just destroy everything? So, and I think they said there's like 1 million Skrulls that live there, so 1 million Skrulls could be there. It's like, no. And then the whole thing is, it's like, why not just have them, be like, have their own area, right? Like we saw Thor, right, do that, where you have the survivors, kind of living in their own area, and I'm like, why can't the Skrulls do that? Like you already have it set up for this other group that has like their own little place on Earth that they're living in. And then they're just like, okay, I guess that's not a possibility for the Skrulls because I don't know, they're green and they could transform. So I guess like if you look like Shrek, then you're fucked. We're just not gonna allow you to have the same privileges as other people. It totally baffled me, and it just didn't really, it didn't really have it didn't hold, the story didn't hold any water to me.
Right. Well, what I thought was interesting was that Gravik kept changing, some of the details to their, quote unquote plan, because because if I remember correctly, initially it was to kidnap the president of the United States, and then it was to attack and kill him. But then they were like, "Oh no, we actually need him alive." And as I was watching, I'm like, "This guy really doesn't know what he wants because he keeps changing his mind the entire time." What did you think about that? Because you would think that there would be some sort of consistency and they would sort of execute it, to down to the finest detail. But it felt like for a guy who was supposed to be in charge, he was all over the place.
Yeah, it didn't really make a whole lot of sense, right? And then like you're really kind of hoping that by the end of it, you're really hoping that the president is going to bomb this area in Russia, which of course they're in Russia, so we could have this kind of ongoing tension with Russia. We had the Red Scare, and we're still on that whole like Russia is going to sit there and cause like the next war, and it just was like, okay, cool. Do I really feel like the president is going to start a war on like some like shitty type of intel from I guess Rhodey, who was a Skrull, which like I said, would have been interesting if they didn't spoil that, but I guess I'll get into that later. But it's just like, do we really believe that the president is going to sit there and do all this shit and go to war over these Skrulls? Answer is absolutely not. Like that's not going to happen. It made zero sense for his plan to eventually get around to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a testament to just how bad the writing was, because it just felt like everybody was all over the place. Like they would, and I read somewhere too that that there were a lot of loose ends that didn't get resolved, and I feel like episode 1 kind of starts a thread, but by the time you get not even episode 6, but by episode 4 or 5, it's like whatever happened to that? It kind of goes back to what I was saying about what Gravik was playing, because Gravik would say, well, we need to do this, and that doesn't work, and he changes his mind, does something else, and you're like, how about sticking to what you were going to do in the first place?
Yeah. Well, here's another one for you, right? So let me ask you a question, right?
Yeah.
Why did they keep the people alive? The Skrulls.
Well, if I understand it correctly, they need to access their memories. I'm not entirely sure, because I was watching them like you could just get rid of them once you've assumed their identity.
Right?
You know?
Like that's what I was thinking too. Like, do they have some type of weird thing? Like I said, maybe I missed this, so
Because I mean,
because
if you think about it,
but,
well, no. Well, no, I was going to say, because if you think about it, if that person's unconscious, they're only going to remember everything up to the point that they got, kidnapped. And then whatever happens after that, they're not going to remember anything. So why even bother with that?
Yeah. It's like, cool. Like, if you want to do that, it's like, cool. I get your consciousness and, I know, like, your memories or whatever, and then you're dead, right? Like, there's literally no reason to keep them alive. That's what was super confusing, because it's like, okay, like, sure, if you want to say, like, oh, they're remaining there so we can get memories from them, but that just sounds stupid. So I like I said, that I guess that makes as much sense as anything, but that goes to what you said earlier. The writing was so bad. It's like you could just really throw anything out there, and we're just gonna try to talk away a huge plot hole based upon like, oh well, I guess they, we have to keep them alive, because really what it is you don't want to get rid of these characters, right? Like, it would be cool if like, oh, Rhodey got killed, like that would be a hell of a thing to happen. But obviously, they don't have the guts to do that. The only thing that they're willing to do was to kill, Maria Hill, excuse me, Maria Hill, who, like I said, I mean, who really cares about Maria Hill, right? Like, yeah, she's there. Like, we've seen her a lot with Nick Fury, but we don't really know anything about her. And like I said, I do really like Ben Mendelsohn as Talos, but once again, I couldn't care any less about his character. So
they were underused. That's
for sure.
I mean, that's what I kept thinking. I'm like, you kill Maria Hill after one episode. I'm like, come on. I mean, this is someone who has played a significant role in Nick Fury's career. I figured she would at least last a little bit longer.
Yeah, or at least build up more to her death, right? Because we see her with, Nick Fury a lot, but we don't really see a whole lot of interaction. It would have been so much more interesting to see more of them be able to interact with each other, because really they play back seats for most of the time in these movies. Like, they don't get a whole lot of screen time together, and then it was just like, we're just going to kill her off. And, the reason is because, it's just there. It's a cheap way to get people hooked, right? Like, oh, they killed Maria Hill. That's, really engaging. But really, it's not, right? They're willing to get rid of all these B characters that no one really cares about. Like, if you actually went out there and you killed Rhodey, I'd be like, you know what? At least you did something. You had the balls. You had the guts to do something. But like I said, they play it safe. You get rid of these characters that really either have very minimal impact, or it's just something to be like, oh, yeah, I know her. Or, hey, yeah, I know Ben Mendelsohn's character. And then eventually they're just gone, and it's like, okay, it didn't really leave an impact on me at all. And I think that's how I'm going to always remember the show. Something that leaves absolutely zero impact.
Well, I was going to say, could you imagine if they pulled a Black Widow and decided to give Maria Hill a mini-series as well? Because, I mean, they killed...
don't give them ideas, Luka. Some to be like, oh, man, that's great. Like, we could talk about Maria Hill because people really care about her. We could, give her a new story so we can learn more about her character after she's dead.
Me and my big mouth. I mean, to be fair, they already did it with Black Widow after they killed her in, in whatever Infinity War. So, I mean, who's to say some bozo up there is gonna be like, you know what, we do need more content. How about Maria Hill? But I was gonna say,
let's just stick my hand in the bag of random characters. Oh, Maria Hill. I guess that's the next one we're gonna do a story about.
I was gonna say too because because I genuinely liked Ben Mendelsohn as Talos. I thought
For
he did a
sure.
phenomenal job. I just felt like the interaction between him and Nick Fury was forced because it was like it was that one scene in the pub where he's eating breakfast, and then Nick Fury's like, "Oh, are you eating dog slops?" And he's like, "Oh, well, I'm not now." And I'm like, I'm like, I sort of get what they're doing here. They're trying to create like the sort of like buddy camaraderie relationship, kind of like what you would see in those cop films in the 70s and 80s. But it just falls flat on its face because if they are trying to be humorous, if they are trying to rib each other, they're not doing a very good job. You know what I mean? And
Not
it's
at
like,
all.
and it's like the entire relationship. It's like I'm not sure if they're friends or if it's like a boss employee relationship.
Yeah.
Because on the one hand, Fury's like, I trust you, Talos. You're a good, buddy of mine. Just paraphrasing here. And Talos, on the other hand, is like, well, you sent us to do all these missions for years and years, and we're doing all the dirty work, et cetera, et cetera. And you don't, and you never really appreciate it. So I'm sorry. I'm supposed, the movies made me are telling me I need to like Nick Fury, but the series here is telling me I should really hate him because he's a dick to everybody.
Yeah.
So it's
That's very true.
because it's very conflicting because it's like the movies are saying one thing, but the TV show is saying another. So then you're like, well, what is it? Like, if you're trying to create a complex character, you haven't done your job because now I don't know if I should like or hate Nick Fury. Whether or not he's the guy who brought together the Avengers, or if he's just so old and irresponsible, he's just having people killed left, right, and center, and he doesn't even blink an eye. You know. So what did you what did you think of Talos?
I liked them. I mean, I at least I liked I think I liked Ben Mendelsohn's acting more than I cared about the character.
Yeah.
Because obviously, he was kind of there to, kind of be the person there that's, kind of making the most sense, right? He's the one that's, trying to stop the conflict of everything. And then, he has a direct connection with, Gaia, whatever the fuck Emily Clark's name was. So, you have her being a part of it, and, you have kind of the relationship that we kind of get, barely any information on because, I guess we couldn't spend time developing that. So you just kind of find out that information just kind of gets thrown into your face about it. So he's kind of the one that I guess is like helping her be a double agent or a triple agent or however you want to be looking at that. So I mean, I like Talos, but like he was very much a one trick, like, oh, we don't want to do this, even though Nick Fury, got erased in the blip. And then, he's been off planet for a long time. I'm like, why does Talos have this much like faith in Nick Fury? Like, what's really warranted this? Because we don't really see them interact, right? Like, we see it in the Captain Marvel movie, and obviously that's an older movie, but like we don't really see a whole lot of interaction outside of that. So it's like, dang, Fury was gone for 5 years, right, during the blip, and then you also have him gone for, and I forget how long he said, where he's just out in space, kind of retired before he comes back. And I'm like, dang, like, Talos really has a whole lot of respect for this guy that's pretty much been vacant over the past decade. So I just, it really didn't make any sense. And the show didn't really help justify or give me any confidence in the type of friendship they were allegedly having.
Or lack of, really.
Yes, or lack thereof, which is far more likely.
So yeah, because when I was watching it, like I said before, I never really got a sense that there was any camaraderie between the two, and even then, I mean, most of their banter kind of fell short because it really didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, they felt more like business partners, right? Like that's right. To me how I look at it, right? They're business partners. So it's like, Fury's like, hey, if you do this espionage for us, then, I'll help you find a planet, right? That's how I've always looked at it. Look more of like a business agreement as opposed to anything else. And I'm not saying that they couldn't have developed a bond or a friendship over that time. But like I said, when you work in the world of, having a TV show, we actually want to see that happening, not just have it be implied that it happened behind the scene.
Yeah, so when Talos dies, trying to get the president out, I know I should be feeling sad, but I just felt indifferent, because it was like the way you set it up, it really didn't give much for me or anybody to care about what happened to Talos.
Yep, didn't register all, just like Murray Hill. Like when she got shot, I was like, oh, okay. Well, that was shocking. And then
That
I
was
moved on.
that was another
Yeah,
another death crossed off the list.
yes, and
Uh,
I was like, oh, cool. Well, that was something. Well, anyways. And yeah, Talos was the same. I must have totally zoned out during that moment because I totally forgot. I mean, I know he died, but I could not tell you at what stage that happened because I was just so uninterested at a certain stage where I'm pretty sure my brain just kind of shut off and I was on autopilot as I was watching the episode. So I probably couldn't even tell you at what stage. I definitely remember the incident where they're doing that, but I'll be damned if I could tell you when Talos eventually died. So that's how very little I really got engaged or cared about that aspect of the story.
yeah, and I just wanted to circle back to Gravik. I mean, not only do his goals keep shifting, but how but you also kind of wonder what exactly is he after? Is he really after trying to help his people, or is he just out trying to help himself? Because you remember he builds that little chamber where he
Yes,
charges himself up. What did you think about that?
that was the most painfully stupid thing. It was just such trash. Like, it's like, cool. So you know what? We're gonna kind of not have anyone have superpowers, but then we're gonna be like, you know what? Now we're just gonna make sure that he gets all the superpowers. Right now, you're just gonna have all of them, and it's just like it totally takes you out of the story because it's just silly. What is the purpose? Like that whole final fight at the end, like it was the most boring, totally uninteresting thing. Like, I don't know who thought that was a good idea, but that was just absolute trash. Like, I don't know what they were thinking in that whole thing. It's just like, cool. Now he has all these superpowers. So how are we gonna deal with it? Oh, well, we'll just we'll give Guy all the superpowers too. And then now we can just have them have a fight with superpowers, superpowers that they've never used before, but we're just all gonna have it. And it just felt so it felt so
Well,
cliche. Like
forced. Yeah.
it was manipulative. Like it was literally like, oh, let's just have the audience. Like, yeah, we'll have Gaia flex like the what's his face.
There are many what's his
Yeah, I
face.
know. But like Drax, right? So, and then you see like Drax's arm. I'm like, okay, like whatever. And then like, she, kind of does all this stuff, and then it was just like, no, this is lame. Like this is just cheap now. Like you're just giving everyone superpowers, and it makes zero sense because really, if they were this strong, then they would be able to destroy everything. It makes no sense. You can't just sit there and give people like all these powers and try to make it make any level of sense in the whole thing. I just it absolutely drove me insane. And like as I said, Gravik's whole character, it just felt like someone on a personal vendetta that went out of control.
Right,
Like, I
right.
don't know who would follow him. It made no sense that anyone would follow him. I sure shit wouldn't follow that guy. I mean, I'm sure it sounded good, like, oh, we want to have a place to call our own. Well, I mean, you could have just like figured that out on Earth, right? I don't think it's that hard to find a place that's out there. I'm not saying it'd be easy, but I mean, it doesn't like they make it sound like some type of impossible chore, and I just didn't see it. And then, like I said, like he's out there, like he's having people do all this stuff. You have people going out there bombing and everything like that. I'm like, holy shit, is this really what all these people are following? Is this really what you're looking for in a leader? Like it totally boggled my mind. I was totally out of it from beginning to end.
So So what did you think about the final episode where Graphic is asking for the harvest?
I'm sorry though. Oh yes, yeah. I mean, yeah. It was just, it was just, it was so bad. Like it was just like, oh, this is great. So now we're just gonna like, he's just gonna get all these superhero powers, and I like how they all flash up on the screen. So this way we know about all the different things he's gonna be getting, like Ebony Maw and all that stuff. And I'm just like, no, like this totally takes you out of it because it's never, it's not gonna last. Like you just know it's gonna happen. Like you can't just be like, oh, we'll just have them combine all these powers together and we're going to create some type of sensible character. No, of course that's not going to happen. Like at that stage, that there's nothing that's going to happen. He's going to have to lose because you can't have that guy just be out there in the world with all these powers. Like it just made no sense. And it just, like it going back to what I said earlier, it just feels like a guy that doesn't know what he wants. He's pissed at the world and, he just wants to see the world born almost. Like, and I think to your point, the reason he changes his mind all the time is because he doesn't even know what he wants. He just wants to do shit, and it doesn't really matter what happens.
Right.
He's just a charismatic leader that somehow gets all these people to follow him, and they just go out there and they just do shit. It just makes no sense between we're gonna do bombings, and then we're gonna have we want to have the president bomb the compound so we could start a war, and then I'm gonna get superpowers, and it's just like, my guy, you're doing too much. Like, just pick a path and stick with it. Don't have something that changes every other damn episode.
Well, it's funny is when he first gets those superpowers and then they attack the president's convoy, with all those men. I was thinking, if you have all these powers, why do you even need guns and all that stuff? You could just attack the convoy by yourself. like I don't understand why you would even go through this facade of trying to be Russian terrorists attacking Americans in England. Just flex your muscles. But
yeah,
it's whatever.
It makes no sense. Absolutely no sense. And like I said, I could tell you exactly why they did it like that, because it'd be too expensive if they gave him all the powers and it made sense.
Yeah.
Right. That's what happens, right? Writers write you in a corner. It's like, well, yeah, well, he's got all these powers now. Well, budget says that we can't do that. We can't be sitting here having all these powers going off. So we're just going to kind of still have them out there. And, and I always like the fact, too, that the Skrulls, like, they're always, mainly they're in their human form a lot, right? Like, they never change people or change to different people at any stage. Like, it's always just kind of the same person that they keep a face for. And it's like, okay, if I'm someone that can, change faces all the time, why would I want to be a guy that's plastered everywhere as being a huge villain, right? Wouldn't it be great if, like, I just blend in to something else? Like, it just totally makes zero sense, and it falls flat on its premise.
Well, what makes even less sense was the fact that Gravik gets the extremist virus, so he can super heal, but then but then when Gaia kills him, he doesn't heal instantly. He just lays there dead. I'm like, we've seen him heal, pretty rapidly, in the past few episodes whenever he gets injured. Now you expect me to believe Gaia just punches a hole in his chest and he's just dead. Is that it? It's like, all right, I guess this is where we're going because that's what the writers want us to believe.
Yep. I mean, there's nothing to do because reality would stick in at a certain stage and be like, hey, you know what? This makes no sense, but we have to wrap up this 6-episode shitfest somehow, so might as well just, sure, yeah, he just, gets a whole punch to them and that's the end,
Yeah, and he doesn't heal from that. Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Just move on. We have to get to this amazing backstory of how Nick Fury's been in love with a Skrull for decades, right? That was more important to have as the final conclusion.
So I do want to touch on that. What did you think about that whole, I guess, B or C or D story of Nick Fury and his Skrull wife?
Well, like, totally, like, what was the purpose of this? Like,
it didn't add anything to the story at all, and I was like,
yeah, it did nothing, right? I mean, I guess you could argue that it shows Nick Fury can't identify Skrulls because he talks all the time, like how it's like, oh, I can't really tell them, or I'm getting better at it. So like him having his wife be a Skrull is like, oh, well, clearly he's not getting it. But yeah, exactly to your point, like there really is nothing to it. It doesn't add or enhance the story in any way. It's just, some shit that's happening, behind the scenes. And it's just like, who cares? Like, I don't care about this. This gives me no engagement. Like, do I care about, you know, his Skrull wife at all? No, you know, I have no thoughts about this. It's doesn't change anything. It doesn't make the story any better. It just felt like some random thing to throw out there that they're like, well, I guess we'll just have this be a thing. And it's like you already have enough conflicting storylines without having some random thing with his wife. And I guess I was supposed to be happy at the end that he's like accepting of her. Like, I don't know. I have literally no idea what they were trying to get across or what the purpose of that whole relationship was supposed to be. It made absolutely no sense.
What was confusing to me was at first I didn't know if he knew she was a Skrull or if she was like replicating, you know, his wife who had been, you know, who had been kidnapped, and then, you know, she was impersonating, you know, his kidnapped wife so she can keep tabs on him. But then you come to find out, oh, you know, I met this dying woman and she'd never fallen in love, so she'll take her face and then she can fall in love with Nick Fury, but she had to promise the dying lady never to hurt her lover. And I'm like, that is one of the most convoluted bullshit I have ever heard. Like, why would you even go into that?
Yeah, I mean, talk about like a long con, right? Like, I mean, holy shit, yeah, like, yeah, we're just gonna sit there, we're just gonna pretend like, yeah, I'll just go 30 years, you know, in this relationship for, you know, the sake of someone I don't know. Like, it just, yeah, it was hard to watch. This was probably one of the worst, like, Marvel, any type of thing I've seen. Definitely one of the worst shows, but that's not saying a lot because most of them have been pretty bad. But I mean, I think this one takes the cake.
Right. So, so I know we mentioned it earlier. But what'd you think about that whole reveal that, you know, Rhodey is actually a Skrull?
I mean, it just shows that the writers don't get how to build drama, right? You know what would have been more interesting? How about we suspect Rhodey's a Skrull, but we actually never see it, right? That'd be interesting, right? That's what you need to do, right? Like, the whole purpose of this is to create this narrative that you have these people that could literally shapeshift into anybody they see, right? They can shapeshift into these people. So you have this guy that becomes Rhodey, and then you spoil it by showing Rhodey is indeed a Skrull. And I'm just like, why? Like, it should have been something where you don't know, and you're working this idea like, okay, is Rhodey, you know, doing what he feels like is right, and is he just wrong? Or is he doing it because he's a Skrull? And that's really what would have been interesting to have, but then they don't do that. And they fail to do that time and time again. And I'm like, why would you do this whole thing where you have this group of people that could do it, and then you never actually follow through on it? Like, they're always just the same people. I'm like, this is stupid. Like, you're doing this, and I get narratively, you know, if you have someone changing all the time, it's hard for you to adapt to the character. So I get that there are some challenges with trying to create this narrative with people that can constantly change, but you do it so little, it almost makes it pointless to do it. Like, I mean, oh, cool, Rhodey's a Skrull. Well, whatever, that's spoiled for me now. Now, whenever I see him doing stuff, I know that it's a Skrull doing it, and eventually there's just going to have to be some type of conflict. It'd been way more interesting if it's like, oh, you know, is Rhodey a Skrull? I have no idea. Is the president a Skrull? I have no idea, right? Like, you know, who knows? Like, this could be a totally long con where it's like, oh, the president's been a Skrull this whole time, and all they need is to have someone pushing it, and then they're going to blame Rhodey or something. Like, oh, you know, Rhodey, he's the one that told me to do all this stuff. And then it's like, oh, but really this was my plan all along. I just needed to have a scapegoat for it. You know, just anything would have been more interesting than what they did on screen.
I mean, I mean, to our point earlier, I mean, they could have learned a lot of lessons from Captain America and the Winter Soldier, because that's the perfect example of how to do a spy thriller in the MCU. But it just feels like they either didn't bother to watch it, or they just skimmed through it and they were like, right, so we're gonna take everything that Nick Fury did in Winter Soldier, but replace Hydra with Skrulls, and somehow they just, you know, screwed it up, you know, royally as a result. So that was like a missed opportunity right there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I read somewhere in one of the reviews, they said that there's a possibility that that the Rhodey we see trapped in that machine, you know, was shortly after he was injured in Civil War. So going forward, the Rhodey that we've seen up until, you know, Endgame was actually Skrull Rhodey. What do you have any thoughts on that or a take
Yeah,
on?
I don't think Marvel would ever think that far ahead to have a clever idea like that. So I think that's just bullshit.
Because I mean, like, if that's the case, then that really just cheapens everything that happened in those movies. It makes it
Sure,
less
yeah,
impactful, you know.
yeah. I don't believe that. I honestly have. I absolutely don't believe that there's any thought that went into this. This has absolutely no connection to to the MCU we've seen. It was just a totally standalone thing. We're not going to see Gaia anymore. Like all that stuff, it was just there to create the story, and that's that. Like none of this is going to have repercussions. None of this is going to boil over. Like it was like cool. We're just going to create this story, about Secret Invasion, and it's not going to have any impact in the grand scheme of things, other than maybe like a brief mention. They'd be like, "Oh yeah, well, remember how to destroy these scrolls and all this," and that's going to be it. That's literally justification. I have absolutely, I would put the odds about 2% that there was actually any type of connection between, the roadie that we see, post whatever Endgame, and then this. I don't believe that at all.
So it was pretty much inconsequential.
Yes, yes. I think it's just people that have too much time on their hands trying to like make things make sense. And honestly, the writers probably are looking at like, that actually might not have been a bad idea. But I highly doubt anyone actually had the forethought to do anything like that.
So could I just say the one character that stood out and I thought did a phenomenal job throughout the entire thing was Sonya Falsworth. Because given what she had to deal with, I thought Olivia Colman, her performance was phenomenal. Her role was pretty good because she was in it just enough to make you wonder. I wonder what she's sort of doing in the background, because you never really quite know where her loyalties lie, because obviously she isn't too keen on helping Nick Fury, but at the same time she's not too keen on standing on the sidelines either. So I thought of all the characters, I thought Sonya Falsworth was probably the only one that actually had any major impact, and who actually did just enough but not too much in the series. Was there any character that stood out to you?
I mean, outside of, like I said, I really enjoyed Ben Mendelsohn's performance, even though Talos' character, I really could give or take. But yes, I would totally agree with you. Olivia Colman really did a great job there. She felt like she was really entertaining. But I will say this, right? Why not have what's the Dreyfus, Julia what's that? What's her name?
Valentina?
Yeah, I don't remember. Is that Julia Dreyfus, right? That's
Her character is Countess Valentina.
Okay, thank you. So why not have that be her, right? Like then you kind of have like something that's interchanged in there, and like I feel like they've already had like a similar personality where like she's just kind of like this really like awkward, sarcastic character. I'm like, why not just have her be involved? Because at least it kind of gives it a little bit more like, oh, okay, cool. Like I've seen her, or maybe she tries to like recruit Gaia at the end or something. Like, I don't know. Like, I just felt like, it was, if you're trying to help build this kind of like role, right? You're the MC, you're trying to help create this narrative, and you want to have like all these types of feelers out there. Like, to me, it would have been interesting to have her be that character, that Sonya Falsworth's character. Just have that be, Julia release whatever, whatever. You know who I'm talking about.
Because it would definitely connect the previous series, and plus it would help set the Thunderbolts, which is supposed to come up.
Right. Yeah, because you have her part of it. She's there. Like, you could have like small things with some of the characters. Like, to me, it was something that you could have helped to build upon it. But I feel like the more they just kind of threw random things in there, the less it actually felt like they cared about this having some type of narrative focus on the MCU as a whole.
So I think we can both agree that Secret Invasion is pretty forgetful, pretty inconsequential, and just poorly executed all the way through, except for the acting. So what's your overall score then for this series or miniseries?
Can we have negatives? Is that allowed in our scoring?
Why not? I mean, this is the first episode where we're reviewing a miniseries, so why not?
Yeah, I won't go negative because I feel like that's just kind of cheap. Like everyone wants to give everything ones or fives. I always found that to be cheap. I'm gonna give this a 1.9. I can't give it 2. I just feel like this is really just scraping the bottom of the barrel. I couldn't care about anything. Like Nick Fury, like, finally got his time to shine. And like all it was just like, oh, you're old, you're out of it. He has that like kind of transformation at the graveyard where it's like, oh, I'm gonna get my eye patch and I'm gonna get this. I'm like, is this supposed to be fun or meaningful? Like, what is this supposed to do for me? Like, he doesn't need it. So is this supposed to be like symbolic or something? Like, I don't know. I didn't care for any of the characters, didn't care for what they want to do with the story. Poor, Amelia Clark, like, just cannot find anything that works for her, right? Like,
Right.
it's just always trying to introduce it. I'm like, she cannot play this character that people keep wanting her to be, right? Like, when I watched her in Terminator, I'm like, this person doesn't give me anything that shows that she's going to be capable of this. And then once again, you have this kind of happen. And once again, I feel like she's just poorly handled. So, and then, some things with Talos and blah, blah, blah. And then Gravik was just a bad villain. I just 1.9 out of 5, could not care less. I hope that this gets taken off of Disney Plus at some stage, and it just falls into oblivion.
So I see your 1.9, and I will go 1.8.
Oh
And
my God, you're ruthless.
during the not only did I subject myself to torture by watching it in one sitting, all right, which was a very stupid and irresponsible thing to do, and I highly recommend that nobody ever do that to themselves unless you really, really are into self-abuse. I just, as a writer, I just feel like there are just so many missed opportunities, and it's just so lazy. You just fall for the same tropes, you fall for the same cliches. You have a lot of loose ends that don't get resolved at the end of the series. The ending was subpar. This is me putting it nicely. The villain it's Marvel at this point, so all of your villains are one-dimensional, but you have a villain whose focus keeps shifting time and time again. You have a protagonist who initially everybody was rooting for, but by the end, I just felt like I don't think I really like Nick Fury now because he's just such a huge asshole. Like, I get he's supposed to be, a spy and everything, hard living, but I felt more sympathy for Gravik than I did for Nick Fury because of the way that they wrote the character. The biggest, the biggest element that made me scratch my head and wonder why even bother was the harvest, because I just thought to myself, the whole point was to create a spy thriller. Yes, with aliens, I could sort of get behind that, I guess. But as soon as you introduce the harvest into that mix, I just threw up my hands and just said, fuck it. If you're not going to even follow through on your premise, why should I even care about the series? Because the original Secret Invasion storyline was basically the Skrulls infiltrating the superhero community and replacing them with Skrull copies. And I was going to say, if you want to watch a good adaptation of Secret Invasion, watch season 2 of Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes. That is how you properly adapt Secret Invasion, because it creates tension among the superhero community because they don't know who to trust, and it leads to a split because now nobody knows if they're actually the person they are or if they're Skrulls. The only thing I liked about this miniseries was the fact that none of the Avengers make an appearance. They don't try to call the Avengers. They don't try to rely on superheroes. They try to handle this on their own, which I will give them kudos for, because they did mention in one of the later episodes, hey, why don't you call your friends? And Fury says, well, we can't always rely on our superpowered buddies to help us, which I thought, see, that is a good line. That is a good premise. It's just sad that
Oh,
It's
really?
just
They
that
just didn't want to spend money on them, though. But yes, I
exactly.
get the sentiment. I get what you're getting at. So,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just sad that the writers decided not to follow through on on the very premise that they sold you know
hmm
Disney on. So that's my overall score on Secret Invasion, and frankly, and frankly, I mean, unless Marvel can do a complete overhaul, we're going to continue to get shitty subpar products, well into the future. So just piling onto that whole superhero fatigue. So the next time we'll be meeting up is around the Labor Day holiday. Do you have any idea of what movie or TV show you want to take a gander at?
that's a great question. Have not thought that far ahead, but I will get back to you as soon as I know.
Well, if you enjoyed our discussion, please leave a like below and subscribe to the channel so you can stay up to date on on the latest reviews and interviews that we do on the podcast. And let us know in the comments below. Let us know what you think of Secret Invasion. Did you think it was one of the best things since sliced bread, or do you agree that it was a stinker? But other than that, thank you so much for watching the episode, and have a great day. Take it easy. Hello and welcome back to the Movie Pope podcast. And today we are going to be taking a look at the box office smash hit Deadpool versus Wolverine. Now, we went to go see that movie last Saturday, and it was a barrel of laughs. I mean, we laughed our asses off. We cried a little bit on the inside, and we were just glad to see the Merc with the mouth back in action, and this time in the MCU. But before we dive in, remember to like, comment, subscribe. And as always, thanks so much for watching, and let's dive in. Lee, how are you doing the week after Deadpool and Wolverine? How's it sinking into your psyche?
Great. I would say it's kind of interesting. I've seen maybe a little bit of a turn, and I don't know because we're doing this a week or so after it came out. I've noticed like some other people are, kind of poking holes into some of the issues, which I mean, there are some in this film. But I think for what it was or what I was expecting to get out of it, it delivered it and then some.
Yeah,
So I think I really did enjoy it. I think for myself, right, the first two were fun, right? I really liked the first one. It absolutely stuck out. Second one was also fun, right? Probably not quite to the levels of the first one, but still quite, enjoyed it a good bit, right? And then when the third one came out, obviously, I'm looking at it through kind of a lens of the time period we're in right now. I think we've seen obviously a decline in the quality of superhero films in particular within the Marvel universe. And when Disney bought Marvel and everything, we got kind of this concern over how would we see Deadpool? Would they kind of like neuter him? Like, what would you kind of see with the character? And I'm glad that as we went into watching this, that they had no problems with pretty much everything, other than maybe some drug usage, which they make a whole joke out of. But I'm glad to see that they allowed Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman to just be able to do what they want with the Deadpool and Wolverine characters.
yeah, and that's the thing too, because of the fact that this is the first R-rated movie that to come out of the MCU, isn't it? Because most of the movies before were PG-13.
Yeah, that's a good question. I believe you're right, but someone will probably be like, "No, you're wrong." But as far as I know, you are correct with that statement.
But I mean, like, but that's the thing though, because because Deadpool works best when he's edgy, when he's being very mouthy, when he's doing things that you normally wouldn't expect in a movie. And what makes it even more fascinating is the fact that you're taking a character who flies off the seat of his pants and you drop him into the MCU where everything is a bit more tamed. It kind of reminds me of that scene from Age of Ultron where Iron Man says shit and Captain America says language. And I'm just wondering, do you think that's probably another reason why he wouldn't be allowed in the Avengers is because they would get tired of him pretty quickly? Um, But I don't. But I don't want to spoil things too much. Lee, why don't you go ahead and take us into Deadpool versus Wolverine? Oh, and by the way, and before we dive in, remember there are going to be spoilers in here. So if you don't want to have your experience ruined, drop everything, go watch the movie first, best 2 hours of your life, then come back and watch this review. Otherwise, if you've already seen the movie or you just don't care and you just want to hear what we think, then let's dive right in. Sorry, Lee.
No, thank
Go
you.
ahead.
That was a great lead in because absolutely, I would not want to spoil anything for anybody. I know cameos and everything play a huge part into this, and some people might want that surprise. And I think actually I did a pretty good job going into this without knowing any of that type of stuff. So I feel pretty good with that. So um, first of all, I mean, it's the opening sequence to me just really hit it out of the ballpark with what I was expecting, and I'm glad that they weren't able they didn't pull any punches with it, because really you have Deadpool literally digging the grave of Wolverine from the Logan movie, right? And you know, for Wolverine's character, obviously he's very iconic. He is a huge fan favorite. And I feel bad for the Wolverine character because he's been in some really sad and pathetic standalone movies, except for Logan, which I think was a fantastic send off. And I think that for the writers, when they're putting this scene together, I think they all kind of got a good joke out of this because you're literally desecrating the guy's grave. And I think that that was just such a fun thing to see. And I like how he incorporates the remains of the Wolverine character into the fight by using parts of his animating body in order to fight off against the TVA, all in the backdrop of the Backstreet Boys song playing. So I think it was a very good thing to see at the beginning. I think it was very tongue in cheek with the action, and I enjoyed that. What did you think about the opening to kind of get us started with this film?
It's very much on brand. What I thought was so fascinating is the fact that and I don't know if you got the impression too, but I kind of got the feeling that they were taking the piss out of both Disney and Fox.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
it's like this is them, you know, telling Fox, you know, hey, you know, thanks for everything, but up yours. And then they turn around to Marvel and say, hey, thanks for the paycheck, you know, fuck you. and they're just like going at it. I mean, it's but they did it in the best way possible. You know what I
Yes.
mean? It's just that it's just that you can't help but think to yourself, wow, like this is a not too subtle dig at the two studios that, you know, that created it and now owns it. And this is not gonna be the first time that we see these subtle digs because we see it over and over again. But this is like the first the first time that we see, you know, Deadpool kind of, you know, tell the two studios, hey, you know what, this is what we think of you know of your studios and your you know business management skills. We're just gonna chuck it at it, and there's nothing you can do because you know the people love it, and you just got to deal with it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree with you. And I think there is a sense of wanting to, I'm going to use this term very loosely because obviously visually we get something different. But I do think that they're very much understood that this character was very beloved. Logan was a fantastic film. I really like that one. I think what they did was they knew that kind of going around this path would be very cheeky, and I think that's exactly what they wanted to do. So, but yeah, I thought it was a great opening, and then we
But I
kind
mean,
of start.
but I mean,
Yeah,
another thing too is that to your point, you know, during the time that Hugh Jackman played, you know, Logan, I mean, he had his ups and downs. I mean, there were some movies that were pretty good, and there were some movies where you kind of ask yourself, why are they even bothering with it?
yes,
You kind of get the feeling that with Deadpool, it's like, you know, he's very much an iconic character, but there's the sort of mentality where he's saying, I'm not going to let you do to me what you did to Logan. You know, if we do any future movies, they're gonna be heavy hitters. They're gonna, you know, they're gonna be home runs. They're not gonna be, you know, box office duds where, you know, people are asking themselves, what the hell did I just see? You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah, for sure. Yeah, because some of those, especially the standalone ones, were just flat out bad. Like the
Yeah, like the Wolverine, right?
Origins, the Wolverine. Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's just some huge duds there. So yes, I think that this was obviously very good, and I think hopefully a fun continuation for a different version of Wolverine, right? Since it's not the one that we see in the Logan film. So I think they kind of maybe snuck out of it a little bit by at least acknowledging the fact that this is the same Wolverine that we saw at the end of Logan. So we kind of see, Deadpool as we get into, I guess, the more of the story overall. And we see that for the most part, he's not really the same Deadpool, right? He's definitely seems like he's kind of hit a bottom. We have this kind of humorous sequence with Happy Hogan as he's trying to become an Avenger, and unsurprisingly, not accepted. So something where I think for him, we could see him down in the dirt, and we see that a lot of his attitude seems to be from his relationship with Vanessa, and we see that in this version, right, or what we're seeing, we see that him and Vanessa have broken up, and I don't know about you, but I kind like the story overall, right, is very weak, right? And I think that the big issue that I had with the story was a lot of this seems to be revolving around Vanessa once again, right? In the first one, we kind of have, him, getting to meet Vanessa, her getting captured and subsequently saving her. And I really like that, right? And then the second one, we kind of played up once again because now Vanessa gets killed, and then obviously we have some time travel, multiverse shenanigans at the end of it, where she's, I guess, kind of brought back to life, so to speak. And then in the third one, it feels like we're back to now they're broken up, and I just didn't enjoy that. How did you feel about the Deadpool and Vanessa relationship and it being once again kind of the focal point of the story?
I mean, I don't have that many complaints about the movie, but I do feel like that one particular plot line could have been omitted, really, because
Yes.
I felt like it was successfully concluded in the second Deadpool movie, so I don't really know why they had to bring that back up.
Yeah.
And you really don't find out why they broke up until later on. And the reason why is it's a bit weird, to be honest
Yes.
with you. But I'm sure you're going to touch on that later.
Sure, yeah, and I think that's the other thing that I also thought was interesting was, I mean, I know you're trying to give a character arc to him by having him go through this. It just feels very much crammed into a story that didn't really need it, especially because as we meet Wolverine, he has plenty of, I think, character story to go through. So I don't know how much that was needed, but yeah. So we have Deadpool kind of down the dumps, and he's celebrating his birthday. And the TVA show up, kind of a different variation that we've seen in Loki. So we have the TV show up, and this is where we meet Mr. Paradox, who I guess would be kind of a secondary villain, so to speak. And he's, interested in Deadpool because he wants Deadpool to kind of help the quote unquote sacred timeline. And we find out that Deadpool's current universe is going to be destroyed because of they describe it as the anchor being is now dead, which is the character of Wolverine from Logan, ironically enough. Now, if you think about it too much, you kind of like, that's weird. Like this anchor being, he's not been around for too long, so why is he the anchor being in this universe? Like, is he really the most important character within this universe? That is where everything kind of revolves around. I don't know.
You kind of get the feeling that it's a bit of a rush job on the writers' end because they're like, oh shit, how can we incorporate all this Fox stuff into the MCU? Oh, I know. You remember in WandaVision where they were talking about Nexus beings? Wait for it. How about anchor beings? Ah.
Yep, exactly. They're like, okay, we got to get Wolverine in here somehow, so let's just talk him up and make him this whole big thing. Which, like I said, kind of goes to the story not being as strong. But
I mean,
I would say
it's not bad. I mean, it's not a bad move. It's just it's a bit rushed and a bit lazy, but it's not a bad move overall. you know.
Sure, right. So I think overall, if you're going to see a Deadpool film, you're not really going for this, terribly complex or engaging story, which I think, it has its highs, but definitely has a lot of things not going super well for it. And so Deadpool takes this as a sign that, hey, I want to save my universe, right? That's about to be destroyed. So the best way to go about doing this is I just need to find a new Wolverine. And this is where we go through our, I guess, loads of different Wolverine variants until we find the, I guess, the worst version of Wolverine. And there's quite a bit of different Wolverines out there. Is there any particular variant of Wolverine that caught your eye by chance?
I'm gonna say Cavill, Wolverine.
It's hard to argue with that one.
Because seriously, because a lot of people have been throwing his name out, for years and years, saying, if they were to introduce Wolverine into the MCU, who would it be? It's kind of like with John Krasinski playing Mr. Fantastic. It's like he would seem like the only actor who could who could play Wolverine, and in a way, I was gratified to see that, because you kind of get a sneak peek as to how he would portray the character without having to feel too bad as to whether or not you would get burned by the choice. It's kind of like doing a test drive for a car, really. I guess if I had to pick a second one, it would be the little Wolverine, because that one's the comic book accurate one, because in the comics he's like 5'3".
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I guess for all those people that are like, oh man, Wolverine's way too tall. Well, we got the mini version of Wolverine that was in there. I know another big one that was circulating that I think a lot of people were thinking about was Jesus, the Harry Potter guy?
Daniel Radcliffe.
Yeah, Daniel Radcliffe, right? Thank you.
I'm so glad they didn't put that in there. Like
there was a lot of smoke around him being like a variant, or at least having a bigger role. And as we see, didn't pop up at all in the movie, but was one of those that are out there. But yeah, I would definitely agree with you that Cavill was a really cool thing to see, because I think he is, to your point, right, a fan favorite that a lot of people were looking at to fill in Wolverine's shoes or yellow bodysuit, depending on what you're looking for. So, but yeah, so using the temp pad that they have, Deadpool and the shittiest version of Wolverine go back, and well, it looks like Mr. Paradox didn't really agree with Deadpool's logic, and they get sent to the void.
But to be fair,
Yeah.
Lee, you're forgetting a very crucial point. You're forgetting that Paradox basically said, we've got to mercy kill, or we got to euthanize your timeline in order to save the multiverse.
Yes.
And Deadpool, well, let's just say Deadpool decided, sticks and stones were a better solution than words.
Yes. Yep. So he's like, well, obviously not exactly going as intended. So they get sent to the void, right? So that's where we end up going for a good chunk here of most of the second act is all in the void. And I really love that it opens with the 21st century or 20th century Fox logo in the background.
I love that too.
Yeah, that was fantastic to see, especially because when you start to see all the characters show up, it becomes more and more transparent why that's there, right? Because really, the void is pretty much just. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But I was gonna say, but back to the point I made earlier. I mean, it's just them taking the piss out of everybody. So
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
I mean, like, it just works. Like when when they do it in this movie, it totally works.
Yes. Yeah, and I did like that, because the void is just pretty much all these previous heroes that we see from old 20th century Fox films, and I thought that was great. I thought that was really funny, because it's pretty much like the kind of in the afterlife, so to speak, where we got all these pretty much like characters that have been gone for a very long time, right? And we'll get to that. I won't spoil any of them right now, but some of these characters been out of us been out of the spotlight for a good 2+ decades.
Yeah, well, what I was gonna say, like if you thought all the variants of Loki were interesting, just wait until you see what happens when when Deadpool and Wolverine encounter the rejects from the multiverse.
Yes, that is very true. So, so now that we're in the void, we get a chance to kind of see some of what's going to happen. And I think the first cameo that popped up, and this one was great to me, was the Chris Evans cameo. I thought it was,
but not in the role that you think, ladies and gentlemen, not in the role that you think.
no, not at all, right? So we see Chris Evans show up, and I love the fact that they really play up to the idea of him being Captain America. Got the I think like he's got some kind of like tattered clothes on, and you could see some red and blue and white. So you kind of were like, oh, that could be it. And then when Sabretooth and the gang show up, and just to see him go like flame on and become the Human Torch was absolutely fantastic. I thought that was great. My only complaint was I really wished that they played up him as Captain America a little bit more, right? I would have liked to see him like bearing the shield, just to kind of further that point home. But I think that was great.
I was going to say,
cameo.
Well, I was going to say, I think even if he didn't have the shield, I mean, because he has been in the void for quite a while, so I think what would have been nice was if he, was if he found like a Captain America uniform, right? And he was like walking around wearing it, and Deadpool's like, "Oh my God, you're Captain America!" And he's like, "Oh no, I just found this off. I just took this off a dead guy."
Yeah,
and then when he flames on, like he burns the costume off, and Deadpool's like, "Oh man, I was just starting to really fantasize about him in that suit." I was also disappointed that he didn't kind of look at his butt and just think, "Wow, that really is America's ass." Like I thought that would have been a great dig right there.
Yeah,
and then he would have been like, yeah, and then Johnny would have looked at him and been like, "What the hell are you talking about?"
Nope, it's true. There was definitely some opportunities there where I think they had maybe some other things they could have done for dialogue
they totally missed it. But
yes.
I mean, if nothing else, Deadpool should have at least made a crack about his ass. Like,
yes, that's true. Yes, there was definitely some opportunity there to have a few more jokes, because I think that for everybody, we think about him obviously as a lot more of Captain America, not as much as the Human Torch from I would say a fairly lackluster Fantastic Four franchise.
But you have to, but to be fair,
multiple times.
But to be fair, you have to be of a certain age group to have seen and remembered that. I mean, those who are younger than 30 will probably have no idea that he was the Human Torch. So
yeah, very, very true. Great point. So and then the other one that we got that I thought was kind of funny, because they really play up this fight that's going to happen is between Wolverine and Sabretooth, right? So obviously, these are two characters that are, constantly butting heads throughout their comic book runs, and everyone was like really wanted to see a big epic fight, and I like how anticlimactic the fight is. It's like they really talk it up just to be a whole lot of nothing. How did you feel about the really pathetically short Sabretooth fight?
I mean, I'll say this: I am glad they got the original actor from the first X-Men movie to play him. I felt like they should have gotten Liev Schreiber instead.
I do really like Liev Schreiber, yeah.
I mean, because think about it, like there was more chemistry between him and Liev Schreiber than the first X-Men movie, because obviously they're in more scenes together, and they're also butting heads. I felt like that would have been a far more interesting scene if we saw the Liev Schreiber variant come up and been like, "Oh, it's you. Well, how are you going to save yourself this time? You're going to go to the bar again," or some dig about how else he failed his universe,
Yes.
Yes. Because I felt like the Liev Schreiber variant, would have done more to kind of like push his buttons, whereas the Sabretooth that we saw in this movie, he was just a purely physical character. And maybe that's all they were going for, because there's only so much screen time you can have. But Absolutely. I felt like if you had that, even if he just appeared for a few brief seconds, if he just said something that kind of dig at him, I think that would have been perfect.
Gotcha.
But
Yeah, that's fair.
but again, missed opportunities,
Yeah,
So
yeah, and I think thinking back to right, the original X-Men trilogy that was out there, right, that was very much Sabretooth's character was just purely the physical presence, like you said. So I guess they were really banking on that, but I do agree with you. I think it would have been nicer, or at least something else they could have added was this different variation of Sabretooth in there.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, so we kind of get this nice sequence where we kind of see this very quick fight and it ends very quickly. And they get taken to, I guess, our main villain of it, which is the character Cassandra Nova, who is Professor Xavier's twin sister. That, from my understanding, Professor Xavier like kind of defeated her in the womb,
yeah.
and the
So yeah,
TVA sent her to the void after that.
yeah. So here's my question. So so as you said in the comics, Charles Xavier, when he's still in utero, he senses Cassandra's evil, so he basically kills her psychically so she can never be born. But which yeah, all right. I mean, it's Professor Xavier; he can do whatever he wants. What I don't understand is if she was killed in utero, how the hell does she end up being a fully formed adult? Um, in the void. Like
I don't know,
how the
man.
hell does that
Like,
even happen? I mean, because at least
only timelines.
with Sylvia it makes sense, right? Like
Mhm.
she gets kidnapped as a kid and she's on the run, and then she grows up on the run and has to learn things for herself. But how the hell does Cassandra even know how to do half of this shit if she was never even born to begin with?
Fair, right? And I think, we could chalk that up, and I would chalk it up to, it's a multiverse, right? So there's some variation where maybe Cassandra Nova ended up killing Xavier instead, and she became the prominent figure in that universe. And I do like the fact that because they're twins, she's also bald.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I mean, that's fine. Like, I guess we're going with that. I don't know. Would it be funnier? Was it funnier the fact that she was bald, or would it have been funnier if she had crazy hair? I don't know. But I did think it was, like I said, amusing when I saw her come out bald. I'm like, okay, I guess because one's bald, the other one has to be bald. But hey, fine, whatever. And
I kind of like the whole Mad Max vibe around that area.
yes,
Did you
that's
get that?
true.
Like, I mean, I was like, you know what? Like, I know they had a few missed opportunities, but I'm glad they went with the Mad Max vibe for that. Like,
Yes.
at least they did good on that part.
Yes, and I do like how the home base too is Ant-Man's corpse. Very amusing thing to have. So we find out that for Cassandra, she works with the TVA and she's there to kind of deal with. She's pretty much the queen slash king of the void, and she's pretty much over it. And we kind of get I guess the rest of the cameos start to show up because the giant entity Goliath comes in. And both Deadpool and Wolverine are able to escape their demise, so to speak. And then we have the most interesting fight sequence that happens in a Honda Odyssey. Um, and I think this one really stuck out to me. So there's kind of the initial battle that happens, and I thought that was fine. But I think the next fight where they're fighting in the van, I think was really interesting, right? I like kind of all the action and just kind of just seeing them work in this very confined environment to have this really brutal fight sequence where pretty much they fight for hours to the point that both of them lose consciousness. So I thought it was great. And, as we kind of go through here, this is where we start to see more variations of stuff. We meet Nice Pool, right? And then we also meet another star of it, Dogpool, right? AKA Mary Poppins. So that's how they actually get the van that they're traveling in is through this group, and we find out that there's more Deadpool variants that we don't really see at this time. It's just kind of a little placeholder for later. So I like how they at least set it up for what's going to happen in the future. And this is where, as I said, we kind of meet some more of our cameos, and these are all from previous Fox superhero films. So we see Elektra, we see Blade, both played by their Jennifer Garner and the Wesley Snipes, respectively. And then I also like how we have Gambit played by Channing Tatum, where if you kind of are, I guess, well versed with some of the stuff out there, originally there was supposed to be a Gambit film. It was definitely one of those things that was in pre-production or they were working on it. And Channing Tatum was cast for that role of Gambit. But that movie never got to see the light of day. So kind of a nice little, wink to the audience with Channing Tatum being Ganon in this. And then we also have X-23 from presumably the Logan franchise shows up as well. And I thought that this was great, right? Especially for Wesley Snipes. Like, I really like the original Blade movie. I thought that was great. So it was really cool to see him. And yeah, how did you think about this cast of cameos, right? Because we got a kind of a big group here that plays a big factor in our fight to escape the void.
I think what would have made it funnier is if they got Ben Affleck back as Daredevil.
No, that's true. Yep, there definitely was a few more opportunities to maybe stick a few more in there. I did kind of like I said, I did like it. I thought for Channing Tatum as Gambit, I thought he talked too much, right? I think for me the whole joke was Channing Tatum doing a terrible impression of someone from the Bayou, so to speak, and he just kind of does this like really awful accent. Even Deadpool makes a joke about it. I wish he kind of talked less, or I thought it'd been really funny if he just barely talks, and then maybe during a big moment he has this huge speech, but no one can understand what he's saying because his accent is so awkward. I just thought that was maybe something they could have done a little bit different. I thought the whole accent gag went on maybe a little bit too long, but overall was enjoyable to see. So we have, kind of all these characters meeting up, and they realize, like, hey, in order to get out of here, we got to defeat Cassandra Nova. So we have Wolverine's character that kind of opens up with X-23, and we find out more about the fact that he was pretty much, he feels responsible for all the X-Men being killed in his timeline because he was, kind of left the situation, and then when he came back, found them all dead. So he absolutely has a lot of skeletons in the closet, so to speak. And we get this, kind of generic, like, let's talk them up type of thing to get Wolverine involved with the fight. And, we kind of get this, fun sequence where we got all these characters. So you got Deadpool and Wolverine, obviously, Elektra, Blade, Gambit, and then the X-23 character. And they all come together to help fight against Nova. And it's pretty cool, right? I definitely like to see Gambit being able to be Gambit on the screen, right? And I think, being able to see him kind of in this cool live action sequence was really cool to see. I definitely question how much these characters would stay alive, especially like Elektra, who somehow survives through the whole sequence. I was kind of half expecting them to be like, no, like some of these characters are going to die really quick. And I was kind of expecting that, but they didn't do that. But we kind of have this, kind of fight sequence, and we find out that Cassandra Nova has the little device from Doctor Strange that creates portals. So they end up actually kind of teaming up with Cassandra Nova to leave the void. And they get brought to Deadpool's universe where we have the final act. So
Wait, hold on. Well, hold on. Go
ahead. I was gonna let you talk there, so go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say you forgot the part where Pyro actually turns out to be a sleeper agent for Paradox, and he shoots Cassandra Nova.
Correct. Yes. So yes, there are some other things that kind of happen for that, but yes, absolutely. So we see Pyro once again from that original X-Men timeline, played by the same guy. So he's in it, as long as I think we got Toad in it, right? So Toad, one of the villains over there,
and Juggernaut. Don't forget Juggernaut.
Yes, Juggernaut, played by someone totally not Juggernaut.
Yeah, not Vinnie Jones.
Yeah, not Vinnie Jones. Thank you. Who else was in that cameo group? I can't. I know that there was a few, but like I said, I'm sure if you pause and you'll see a lot more cameos that they throw in there. But yes, in essence, they go back to Deadpool's universe where they want to save his timeline from being destroyed with this device called the Time Ripper. So we have, let's see here. So we got the time ripper, so they're in the universe. So we have a bunch of the Deadpool variants that come in to do this really long fight sequence, right? So we got Deadpool, Wolverine. Nice Pull is there very briefly for, I guess, the good guy side. And then we have all of them fighting up against all these other Deadpool variants. And, I enjoyed it, right? They kind of do this like little one take as far as the fight sequence goes, and kind of go through like a bus that's there. And I really like at the end of the sequence, like they all start to regenerate, and it's kind of funny when you think about it. It's like, oh yeah, like they did all this awesome stuff, they kicked all this ass, but they're all just going to regenerate anyways. So obviously, I would question why some of them regenerate so much slower than others. But I thought that was really funny to see it all happen. And luckily, we have the hero Peter, right, shows up in order to take care of the variants. And I like how big of a character Peter is, where literally he's in every timeline and every Deadpool loves their Peter. So I thought that was quite enjoyable. So what did you think about that big old fight sequence with Deadpool versus 100+ variants there?
I mean, it very much has an Avengers Endgame vibe to it.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you have the portals open, and you see all these like people coming out of the portal. Like it definitely reminds you of the last battle scene. But what I also thought was interesting is the fact that you get several voice cameos too, because Lady Pool is voiced by none other than Blake Lively, who happens to be the wife of Ryan Reynolds. And then I think Cowboy Deadpool is voiced by Nathan Fillion, who's a favorite of ours.
Yes.
There was one other like well-known actor who voiced a character, but I can't remember who it is at the moment.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll find out too that there's probably more we don't know of. I know Tom Holland's brother, I believe, played one of the variants. I don't remember or recall if he
It wasn't Kidpool, was it?
I don't remember. Don't quote. I remember seeing a blurb about it, but I don't recall who it was. It might have been Kidpool, might have not. I don't know for a fact.
Okay.
But I know he was a part of it. So yeah, I'm sure that there are quite a bit of voiceover cameos, so to speak, that was in there, along with the levitating head Deadpool, which
Deadpool.
Don't know anything about that character, but hey, it was definitely something unique. So, now that Peter's come to save the day, we need to have Deadpool and Wolverine. They need to stop Cassandra Nova, who's going to use the Time Ripper to, destroy all universes, because, that's what it feels like we have to do now. It's not just one reality that's in jeopardy, it's everything's in jeopardy now. And they find out that the only way that they're going to be able to destroy the Time Ripper and defeat Cassandra Nova is they need to, I guess, be a bridge between like antimatter and matter, or they do some scientific mumbo jumbo there. But pretty much someone has to sacrifice himself in order to do it.
Which by the way is a reference to Star Trek, the Wrath of Khan.
Yeah, yes. There's definitely a lot of fun things that they do with that, and I do like the fact that they kind of play this back and forth, and it kind of reminds me of when in the Avengers, right, when you have Hawkeye and Black Widow, and they're kind of like trying to fight to see who dies type of thing. I kind of like how they do this a little bit here, where you think that Wolverine's like, hey, I really need this. I need to be the one that does this to save humanity, because, I feel like this is my redemption arc. And Deadpool's like, sorry, you're not going to do it. So he ends up going in there to sacrifice himself, just to realize that, what, this ain't going to work. I'm not going to be able to do it. But luckily, Wolverine shows up, and we have this really funny sequence where, Wolverine kind of starts to like lose his shirt and everything, and you see Deadpool kind of eyeballing a shirtless Wolverine, which, from what I understand, was 100% Hugh Jackman, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, give the guy some props, right? The guy's in his 50s, looks really damn good for that role. But according to everybody, that's 100% him. So, but yeah, so we kind of have this nice moment where, Deadpool and Wolverine both quote unquote sacrifice themselves to save all the timelines. And because of it, we kind of get this ending. But lo and behold, and probably not a surprise to anybody, both Deadpool and Wolverine survive. So both of them have their sacrifices, and well, sacrifices is maybe a different word for it because they're both okay. And there's kind of this like little deal that gets made to kind of maybe bring them all together. And the film ultimately ends with Deadpool being with his friends and family that are close to him, and they kind of hint at he's done all this for Vanessa, which we kind of know from out through the whole story. And we see that Vanessa and him are maybe rekindling something there at the very end, and that's how it ultimately concludes. There's also the shawarma scene, which I guess I'll go ahead and mention because that was a huge gag at the end of the one of the Avengers films. So, but yeah, that was the conclusion, and yeah. So, Luka, tell what you think about it overall.
I mean, I really enjoyed it. I will say this though, I was really hoping that this would be the opportunity for Deadpool to enter the MCU, i.e., the sacred timeline. Um, what I was really expecting or hoping from the plot anyway would be that his home universe dies, but he finds a way to save it, but it gets merged into his into the Marvel timeline. So he sort of gets incorporated into the world of the Avengers, and the X-Men get incorporated into the to Earth 616 and all that stuff. So when he goes back to his own timeline and that's it, I kind of felt like, well, I do feel a bit let down because I was hoping there would be something more to that. Um, but overall, I really enjoyed it. Especially loved all the callbacks. That I was gonna say that one scene where they're bridging between matter and antimatter, where they're all glowing. That's that's a nod to the first Guardians of the Galaxy,
Mhm.
where they all touch the one of the Infinity Stones, and they're all holding each other's hands while they're
Mhm.
trying to channel its energy. So I kind of like that nod too, because it's not just a nod to the Avengers films; it's a nod to all the other films in the
Yep.
Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was pretty much that was like my main um, gripe with it, is the fact that they should have found a way to incorporate Deadpool into this new timeline, into this new reality, as it were. But
That's fair. I guess. Yeah.
I'm sure they'll find another way to bring that about. They are talking about Avengers Secret War, so maybe there'll be the opportunity to to bring that dream into realization, but who knows?
Yeah, and to your point, I'm glad you brought up that last point, right? Because I feel like now that we have all the multiverses, I don't think there's a lot that you have to do to bring Deadpool into whatever reality you want to at this stage. But you did bring that up, so I totally agree with you on that. And I think overall, right, like if you're interested in the cameos, they were a ton of fun. I know some people feel like maybe it was a little bit too much. I didn't really feel that myself personally. I do think that there's quite a bit. But I think that kind of goes with everything that we've seen so far, so it didn't bother me a whole lot. I definitely got some good laughs. Being able to see Hugh Jackman again as Wolverine was, great. I know we all kind of think about Logan and think about his sacrifice and everything, which was very poignant and well done. But I feel like at least with this version of the Wolverine, it certainly did it justice. So I was glad that they didn't, kind of shit all over Wolverine in a movie where you're bringing him back from the dead, so to speak. So I really like that. As I said, my only real gripe with this overall was the story, which I would say, from my personal take, was, really lackluster. There wasn't a whole lot going on with it overall. I think that, having Vanessa kind of be once again the focal point of another of the Deadpool films is just a little bit awkward to me. I get why you want to have it be that way, but it just feels like they have less and less creative ways to have her be a part of the story. And it just is kind of obnoxious for that. But I don't think many people going to see Deadpool are there to see like this really thought provoking story. So I think if you're there for the laughs and you're there to just have a good time, I think they absolutely knocked it out of the park. So I guess, Luka, what is your final grade?
I'd probably give it a 4.7 out of 5.
Ooh,
I mean, this is one of the few films of 2024 that I really enjoyed. Um, and I mean, if you don't really put your thinking cap too on for too long, this is a movie that you can definitely enjoy. I mean, like I said, I mean they've been talking it up for for months since they've acquired the property rights to Fox, 20th Century Fox, about how they're going to incorporate the X-Men into the MCU. And I was hoping this would be the opportunity, but I felt like this was a huge missed opportunity for them. I mean, maybe it's because they spoke with the higher ups at Marvel and they were told, hey, don't do this yet. This we want to kind of whet everybody's appetite first before we actually do a proper integration of all the universes. But I felt like for for what it was trying to do, I felt like kind of fell short. But other than that, I mean, you could tell everybody had fun. I mean,
yeah.
at the end, you felt like Chris Evans was just enjoying himself, just like running his mouth. I'm like, you know what? I bet this is what he really wanted to do with Johnny Storm, but he didn't get the opportunity to do it.
Yes. And obviously for Captain America, very much a very stoic figure. So not
Yeah,
exactly
playing it
all
straight,
that.
basically.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So not too many options there. So for me, I would say I would give this a 4.3 claws out of 5.
Hmm.
I think, like I said, it was really fun. I really like to see it. I think that there was probably a few opportunities to do something different. I do agree with you that maybe there was a few more opportunities to help implant a few other like kind of like story seeds out there, because obviously this was a huge thing for Marvel this year, being its I think one and well, I think there's technically two, right? Because I think there's another Marvel film that comes out in November. But it obviously was a very big thing for Marvel, and I think that with it, the Marvel downward trajectory that it's been, along with the fact that this has been in production limbo for some time, I'm surprised at the quality of work that came out of it. Even if I felt the story was pretty much its biggest fault, which as I said, for something that's more based upon comedy and probably a little bit more on the fan service side of things, the story wasn't exactly something that I was fully focused on. Yeah,
Don't forget. Also, I mean, ever since they acquired the rights to 20th Century Fox, that's been the question on everybody's mind: is how are they going to bring the X-Men
yeah,
into the MCU? So so you kind of get the feeling, the reason why they've been taking so long with getting this movie out there is because they're trying to find the best way to do it. And and when you sit down to watch the intro, you're hoping, oh boy, I can't wait to see Deadpool be in the MCU proper. And then when you get to the end, you're like, well, what the hell was that all about? Um, I will say this though, I know you have an issue with Vanessa being in this movie, but it could have been worse. They could have brought Weasel back.
that's
So
true. That's true. And don't get me wrong, I have no problem with Vanessa. I really like her. I just wish that Deadpool's actions weren't always revolved around something to do with her. So, and I think it's just this third one was the one I noticed it the most, just because it didn't feel as warranted as in the first one, where it's a lot about their blossom relationship. The second one, him dealing with the grief of her death. This just felt very anticlimactic compared to how she's been utilized in the past. So,
yeah.
um, yeah, that's everything for me. So
So let me ask you this. So out of the two characters, which one do you think performed best? Was it Deadpool or Wolverine?
oh, that's a hard one. Um,
I'm
I'm gonna say Wolverine, right? And I think the only reason I say Wolverine is because I feel like we've pretty much discarded the idea of Hugh Jackman being Wolverine anymore. I think
Mhm.
I looked at Logan, and I'm sure almost everyone looked at Logan as being his swan song. So to have him don the attire once again, I think that just clicked in my little brain, right? That like, oh, this is so cool to see him again. So I think maybe just fanboyism is maybe getting the best of me. But I think Hugh Jackman's performance is great, and that's nothing at all against Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool. Like he has once again a great showing. It's just that I think for myself, I it was hard like years ago. Would not imagine seeing Hugh Jackman be Wolverine again, to see him on screen, I think just kind of blocks all my thinking away from anything else other than him being the better the better job, did the better job this time around.
Because I mean, Hugh Jackman even said like after Logan, was released in theaters, I think he said he was done playing Wolverine. He was hanging up the claws, so to speak.
Yeah, totally agree.
I mean, I'm gonna have to say Wolverine also, just because of the fact that Hugh Jackman, when you think there's nothing left in the tank for him, he brings us more, and we're left wanting more. Like, come on, man, tell us more about this Wolverine. And what's great is the fact that he's not playing the Logan that we're familiar with, the Logan that we've seen on screen for 20 or so years. He's playing a completely different version of the character, but he's still this character that we're familiar with, even if he's not the Logan from the Singer verse, as it were.
Yep. And just like in the movie, they're probably gonna have him play till he's 90 years old, just like the movie said.
Exactly. And hey, I mean, I would have no problem with that. I mean, because we've seen Samuel L. Jackson get de-aged in Captain Marvel. I could probably do the same thing in whatever, I guess, Secret Wars. Whenever that's supposed to come out in 2 years, I think.
Yep. Wolverine in a nursing home.
So speaking of which, so Lee, when we went to go see Deadpool and Wolverine last Saturday, San Diego Comic-Con was in full swing, and one of the big news obviously is Kevin Feige in Hall H making his announcements for the next phase in the MCU, which isn't really new because he's been doing that for 10 plus years. But we did get some new developments. We did finally get to meet the cast of the Fantastic Four, and they started shooting this week in England. But we also got something that was very new and a bit unexpected. I think
I know what you're getting at.
So let me go ahead and just get this out of the way first. So first and foremost, can I
have block, Luka?
Yeah. Can I just say first of all, this came out of left field. This came out of left field for me because I first of all I went to go take a brief nap because we did enjoy some pretty high quality Vietnamese food after the movie. But when I woke up from my nap, I looked at my feed and I happened to see this video here. And I was a bit confused. And at first I thought this has got to be a joke. And I emailed you a link to the video. But then I came to realize, they aren't trolling us. This is actually a thing. So let's take a look and see what we've got here.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe it.
About a Marvel shocker heard across the multiverse.
So
new mask, same task.
So no, right?
5 years
so
after Robert Downey Jr.'s iconic superhero Iron Man met his end in Avengers Endgame, the Oscar winner will don a different mask to play the ultimate bad guy, Dr. Doom, in the next 2 Avengers films.
What can I tell you? I like playing complicated characters.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of this decision at all. I don't really get it.
I don't get it. Are you a baddie now?
Oh, well, I guess thank you, Gwyneth Paltrow, for echoing what I was just saying.
Mystery. And the Flying Fantastic Car at Comic-Con's Hall H helped to welcome the cast of the super hype Fantastic.
Oh, here's a girl, Lee. Here's a girl.
To be able to share any of this with
the
world.
Pedro Pascal, Vanessa Kirby, Joseph Quinn, and Eben Moss-Bachrach blown away by the enthusiasm.
Hey, you know what's ironic? We were just talking about the bear earlier, right? Remember we were talking about the bear?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Kind of throwing down the gauntlet. It's a nice sort of challenge.
Totally unexpected connection there, but there we go.
Best time ever.
82 years old and not slowing down a bit. Harrison Ford kept it real, revealing why he joined the upcoming Captain America Brave New World.
You may be Captain America.
All right, so
you're not Steve Rogers.
So we discussed this briefly before recording, but but do you feel this is a move of desperation on Marvel's part to bring back RDJ?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I don't. I'm just gonna go ahead and say this now. Now, this is nothing against RDJ, right? I think obviously he's, gone through some really highs and lows in his life, and I think his casting for Iron Man was just incredible, right? I think he plays that character so well. I feel like people throw around like, hey, I couldn't imagine another actor playing this, character X as good as they do. And I feel like people throw that on really, really loosely. But for me, the way that Robert Downey Jr. plays Iron Man, to me, is the one that I always feel like it's hard to envision anybody else playing that character.
I mean, he was pretty much playing himself, if you think about it.
Yeah, exactly, right. And I think that's why he has such a high level of comfortability with it, is because, it's easy to carry that persona into your acting when you don't have to do a whole lot of acting for it. But yeah, like I think that I just really enjoyed the character. I think it was, a really great performance. And I think people were obviously bummed that he gave up his life for to save everybody, right? I think that definitely was a hard send off for people to accept. So to see him in this role feels very forced. I think that it's a very cheap way to just inject Robert Downey Jr. back into the universe. I know that there might be some, comic book leanings where there's, the whole Doctor Doom and Iron Man, and they having some connection. I'm sure there's some comic book at some universe that's been done over the past, century that's a part of that. But I think regardless of what you kind of throw out there, it just feels very forced to have him playing that character. It just, to me, just feels wrong to have it be like that. And it feels 100% that they made that choice because people like Iron Man. So now, we can't, maybe we'll bring back Iron Man somehow, or maybe we'll just bring back RDJ and he'll just be like Iron Man, but we'll just have him be Doctor Doom instead. So I didn't really like it. I thought it was a very forced choice. I think that there was a lot of different things out there. So yeah, I'm not a fan of it. It just feels like cheap way to bring back a character that we've already seen before.
But I mean, if you think about it, at the beginning of what was it, Phase 4, Phase 5, they were basically saying, well, the first part of of the saga was Thanos, right? It was all about Thanos and in the Infinity Stones and assembling them and trying to wipe out the universe. So they pretty much said, well, the next villain for the next few phases is going to be Kang the Conqueror, and it all started with Loki, where they kind of laid the foundations with, the next baddie is going to be Jonathan Majors as Kang the Conqueror. And they ran with that for a few movies and TV shows up until, what was it, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, right?
Yep.
And they were pretty much saying, yeah, he's going to be the next villain that the Avengers will have to face. So when Jonathan Majors got into a legal kerfuffle over domestic violence dispute, and he was dismissed by Marvel, I kind of got the sense that they were still going to stick with Kang because he was he was marketed as the level, as the villain who's sort of on the level or beyond the level of Thanos. Like, who's worse than Thanos? Well, someone who can control and manipulate time, which would be Kang, right? So I thought, well, they're probably going to have to, look at getting another actor. They would still keep all of the storylines that they built in Loki and all the other movies and TV shows, but just go with a different actor, but still keep the same villain. So, so going back to my point from earlier, when they announced RDJ as Doctor Doom, and he would be the villain of the next two Avengers movies, this came as a huge shock because, because then it calls into question, well, what the hell were all the other movies about then? Because if you think about it, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania really didn't add much, apart from the fact that you learned a little bit more about who the Kang the Conqueror was, and you kind of get the hint that his next mission is to enter the sacred timeline and wipe out that universe's Avengers, because he's already wiped out Avengers in other universes, right? So so now that you introduced Doctor Doom into the equation, and he's supposedly going to be, the new baddie who replaces Kang, it kind of makes you wonder, well, what was the purpose of Loki and all that other stuff then, right?
Yeah,
'Cause-
no, continuity wise, I think everything's kind of scrambled at this
It's,
stage.
it's in the shitter basically
Yes.
because now you've got nothing. I mean, sure, you've got the multiverse, but the multiverse itself got really, really old, and we've mentioned this time and time again. I mean, we've talked about this when we reviewed The Flash, when we reviewed Secret Invasion, all that stuff. I mean, we've said time and time again, the multiverse is it's such an easy an easy thing to play with, but it's also easy to mess things up. So so now Marvel is finding itself up shit creek without a paddle, because they built up a villain who is no longer going to be the villain because of personal issues, and they've talked up a multiverse which really isn't going anywhere, right? Because like we mentioned a few minutes ago about Deadpool, I mean, they had the opportunity to take all of these disparate elements from different franchises and different studios and bring them together under one banner, but they failed. So now you've got to ask yourself, well, if they're going to continue with the multiverse, they've got to do something new with it, because what they've been doing for the past 5 years now, it's not going anywhere. It's going around in circles. And the villain who was supposed to be the big baddie who would represent a threat to the multiverse, he's not a threat to you anymore, because apparently he's subject to the laws of man. So now you've got to bring in a new villain, and furthermore, you've got to bring in an actor who, let's face it, I don't think may be able to pull off being Doctor Doom, unless they decide to make Doctor Doom very, very much like Tony Stark.
True. And you brought up a great point, right? Like, we're dealing so much with multiverses and everything. Like, if you really wanted to have Kang, I don't know why you just don't recast him. Like, I think it's so easy just to write off, like, oh, why do you look different? Oh, something.
Because he's a variant.
Yeah, like, I'm from a different universe.
Because they've already done this in Loki. It's not hard, dude.
Yeah, and I think another thing that kind of got to me, right, and I think as you're talking about a great point about this is, we bring up Kang for his power, right, his ability to manipulate time. So he's got these abilities. The problem that I have, right, is when I look at Doctor Doom, I don't see him being nearly as powerful as either of these previous, villains, right? So
I mean, Doom is a human being. I mean, granted, he's smart, but he is probably like 10 rungs below Thanos. I mean, he's 10 rungs below Magneto, for God's sakes.
Yeah. I mean, not everything is going to always be like, you can't always blow up everything, because it feels like there's never good enough stakes at a certain stage. So, like, I understand that. But yeah, it's really weird that you went with this mindset that you want Kang, who's going to be this, very strong, Thanos level type of supervillain, and then you replace him with Doctor Doom, who is clearly not in the same sphere of power that we've seen previously. So, but I mean, curious to see what they want to do with that.
But here's my issue: it's the fact that they kept talking up Kang as if he were supposed to be the next, next big baddie. So it's on Marvel. So it's on Marvel, because they're the ones who kept saying over and over again, "Oh yeah, Kang's going to be the next villain. He's going to be the next baddie. He's going to be the next threat that the Avengers will need to take 2 movies to defeat, like Thanos." But then they do this, and it's like, well, clearly this is a reflection of what's going on behind the scenes, because because now it's showing, Marvel is just, they show their hand, basically, right? Like had they not done that reveal at Comic-Con, we could have gone on thinking, oh, they've got something, something up their sleeve. We don't know what it is, but we're willing to wait a few years to be surprised, at movie theaters. But now that they've showed their hand, it's like, well, you've been bluffing this entire time, dude. I mean, you've pretty much sold us. I mean, you sold us on a Mustang, right? And we end up with a Honda Odyssey. Sorry, I was just looking for a way to incorporate that joke in there.
Very topical. I like that.
But you get my point, because this entire time they kept saying, well, this is what we're selling you guys. I mean, if you watch episodes, this, and this of this show, and if you pay attention to the post-credit scene of these movies, you'll see where we're going at here. And then to throw this, from left field, it's like, this is bait and switch, dude. I mean, this is worse than bait and switch. This is an act of desperation. This is a Hail Mary pass on your end, and it's not going to go well for you, because as much as we love RDJ, I mean, the guy can play, pretty interesting characters. I mean, we did a review of Oppenheimer where we talked about how he played, he did a really good job playing Strauss.
Yes.
But I mean, playing a skeezy senator is not really a good prerequisite to playing, the leader of a country with the resources to, possibly take over the world,
Yeah, they did a lot of course correction here, and it'll be interesting how they try to, I guess, retcon / insert this into the current stream of stuff that they have out there, because they definitely went with a very, very different direction with, I think, overall, I don't want to call him like a weaker villain, because I never liked King as far as the villains go, so I was very indifferent to him anyways. And I'm sure a lot of people also reiterated that they weren't huge fans of Kang. So I think in Marvel's mind, right, it's like, well, people didn't really like him. We have the whole thing with Jonathan Majors that's going to be an issue. So, I think for them, they're like, oh, well, we'll bring back Doctor Doom, right? Like, we have to get the Fantastic Four involved, and, well, who we want to play him? Well, everyone liked that Iron Man guy. So I guess we'll just throw his character in there. So, but yeah, it does feel very cheap, and I totally agree with you that they have clearly gone a different direction, and now they have to figure out how they're going to, I guess, play up Doctor Doom to make him be a character that people want to be invested with. So we'll see what happens. But, I think when it comes to the Avengers and everything, I think it's just its name will draw enough people in, but how good of a quality film we'll be getting leads much to the imagination at this stage.
Well, I was going to say, to your point about Kang, how nobody really cares about Kang, it just made me think this is the most expensive group survey ever. Like, they have literally spent like close to billions of dollars just to survey people and say, what do you think about Kang? It's like, I don't really care about him as a villain. It's like, oh, okay. It's like, well, congratulations, Marvel. You have flushed billions of dollars.
Yes,
trying to get us to love a villain that nobody gives a shit.
Yeah. It definitely. I think in hindsight, there's a lot of people kicking a lot of people's asses right now, because I think it was not well received. Think about just an Ant-Man where he gets defeated by one character, right? So it's really hard to really get that invested when you kind of have what we've been shown so far. So, but yeah, I know that, but that's the state of Marvel, right? We've talked about to death that they've gone, they've been dropping quality left and right, and it's just been getting worse and worse. I think this is their really kind of last-ditch effort to totally try to change things around. So I guess we'll see what happens in the news and whenever they start putting some release dates on some of these films.
Well, they said the next two Avengers movies are supposed to come out in 2 years, so I guess we'll keep our ear to the pavement and see what's going on. Mm-hmm. But I don't want to be too negative, because we did see the cast for the Fantastic Four, and we did a review recently of Hobbs and Shaw, and we both agree that Vanessa Kirby did a phenomenal job in that movie, in spite of all of the BS that was going on. I kind of feel like the Fantastic Four would be pretty decent. Now, mind you, it is going to be a period piece, so it is set in the 1960s. But I am curious to see what's going to happen there. Do you have any quick thoughts on that?
I mean, it can't be any worse than the first two. So,
or
the first two, like in the continuity, right? Because obviously the first one had 2 or 3. I don't even remember. Right? I remember the Silver Surfer.
Yeah. So
and then you have Fan Forstek.
Yeah, because the first 2 had Jessica Alba in it, and then Fan Forstek was basically the movie everybody wanted to forget.
Okay, yep. Yeah, it can't be any worse than those, because the first one didn't care that much about. Silver Surfer didn't care a whole lot about. Fan Forstek was just bad, flat out bad.
It makes you wonder why you have eyes.
bar is painfully low right now for the Fantastic Four. So hopefully, this ends up being good because they really need it to be good. Especially if they want Doctor Doom to be the next big baddie, to carry to put Marvel movies on their back again.
But I also get the feeling too that whenever the next two Avengers movies comes out, it's not gonna have the same magic that the Avengers of the 2010s had. Like it's just not going to be there. It's going to be it's kind of going to be like you're just going through the motions.
Yeah.
Really. All right, well, that's going to do it for our review of Deadpool and Wolverine and our reaction to RDJ returning as Doctor Doom. Let us know down in the comments below what you think. Are you excited to see Robert Downey Jr. coming back and playing Doctor Doom, or are you just scratching your head and asking yourself, what the hell am I looking at here? And let us know in the comments down below what you think of Deadpool and Wolverine. Are you mad at us for spoiling the movie? Because if you are, just go and see the movie already. It's out in theaters. It's not that hard. And if you agree with our talking points, or if you have a favorite cameo, let us know down in the comments below. But as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one. Take it easy.